Twilight was slowly but surely falling on the shinobi village, the village hidden in the foliage, or as it is also called, Konoha. The sun had already hidden behind the horizon, and its warm rays could not warm the cooling earth. Grasshoppers were humming their cheerful song in the grass, and the trills of a nightingale could be heard from the treetops. All living things were getting ready for sleep, and there were practically no people on the streets. A small, fair-haired child, who looked to be about 8 years old, wandered aimlessly through the streets, constantly looking around and listening to something. Why was a small child not at home, but wandering through the dark streets? This boy had no family, or rather, his parents died 8 years ago when Konoha was attacked by a terrible monster, the most powerful Biju, the nine-tailed demon fox. That night, the fourth Hokage, having given his life, used a sealing technique, locking the monster in the body of Naruto. That was the name of this boy, thus becoming a hero. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, the unfortunate child did not know that he was a new vessel for the fox, so he sincerely did not understand the hostile attitude of adults towards him and tried his best to attract attention to himself, to show that he was also worth something. But his methods of showing himself did not give him anything except new insults and, often, bruises. That night Naruto decided to play pranks again, hoping that his new masterpiece would be appreciated. The kid was holding a small jar of green paint in his hands, and the boy's clear blue eyes were shining with mischief. It was clear that he had something not very good in mind. After waiting for a passing cloud to hide the moon, the child, smiling slyly, ran down the street, stopping at a small stall, the owner of which was already resting peacefully at home. Looking around and making sure that no one was watching him, the blonde dipped his brush in paint and, sticking out the tip of his tongue, diligently began to decorate the walls of the stall, drawing there everything that his boundless imagination suggested to him. The reeds were rustling, YK. The trees were drooling, and the night was so warm. YK. It was. Humming this song, 5 Junin crawled out from behind some house, staggering and stumbling at every step. 3 of them were holding bottles of sake in their hands, the contents of which were slightly splashing at the very bottom. The Jonins were completely drunk and were now looking for a way to show off in front of each other. At that moment, Naruto, hearing voices approaching him, decided to run. If only he had stayed where he was and hid. Unfortunately, the boy ran, attracting the attention of the drunk ninja, who quickly recognized the street urchin. Hey, guys, isn't this YK? That one, YK. Well, isn't that demon, YK? One of the Jonins asked, pointing his finger at a child running past. Yes, YK. Him, that bastard. Because of that, YK, demon, my little brother died. I'll kill him. The man roared and, somehow moving his stumbling legs, headed towards the running boy. The blonde, realizing that he had been discovered and was apparently going to be beaten, jumped onto the roof, from which he jumped onto the next street. The boy ran fast, and his legs almost never let him down, but today, luck seemed to have decided to turn away from the little Jinchuriki. The child did not notice a protruding stone and, tripping over it, plowed the ground with his nose. A few seconds later, the same 5 Jonin who had stumbled upon him after a successful party landed near Naruto. Without waiting for the boy to get to his feet, the adult placed his foot on his tiny back, pinning the unfortunate child to the ground. The baby whined in pain, causing the Jonin to laugh happily. You, demon, YK, listen here, here, YK, it's time to pay the bills. YK, I haven't forgotten what you did yet. Pressing harder on the fragile body with his foot, the Jonin growled threateningly and, grabbing the boy by the hair and putting him on his feet, he punched the child's face with all his might. Tears welled up in the little blonde's eyes, and his entire tiny body trembled from the effort to hold back a cry of pain and not to cry. The drunks didn't seem to like it and they surrounded the blonde, started kicking him and shouting threats and insults. Naruto endured as long as he could, but when there was no more living space left on his body, he burst into loud sobs. The Jonins recoiled in surprise, but quickly came to their senses. The little Jinchuriki had enough of these few seconds to crawl away from his tormentors and somehow get to his feet. Having spat out several clots of blood on the ground, Naruto made a seal with trembling hands, frantically remembering how the academy teacher talked about illusory clones. Of course, he didn't succeed. Firstly, because he either missed most of his classes or slept. And secondly, because they had only gone through the cloning technique in theory, there was no practice yet. Realizing that the boy, no matter how hard he tried, would not be able to create even a basic technique, the Jonins became even more cheerful. After exchanging glances, the men nodded and began to form seals with great speed. Element of fire. Element of wind. Element of earth. Element of lightning. Element of water. Almost simultaneously, the men screamed, not allowing them to make out the names of the techniques. Naruto's eyes widened in horror as the explosive mixture of all 5 elements was directed at him. The boy put his hands forward and closed his eyes. There were seconds left before the collision with the techniques. 4, 3, 2, 1. The blond man shrank, having already said goodbye to life, when suddenly the techniques united and, shining with unprecedented colors, swirled around the child. After the haze from the unprecedented combination of techniques dissipated, only one small blond child remained on the street. Naruto, still in a state of shock, looked around in an attempt to spot his offenders, but they were nowhere to be seen. Having somehow calmed down, the child slid down the wall, burying his head in his torn knees. Bitter tears rolled down the boy's cheeks, and one single question was spinning in his head: why? Why does everyone hate me and call me a demon? Deep in thought, Naruto rubbed his knees and arms, trying to stop the bleeding and ease the pain. Suddenly, he heard footsteps and, pressing himself against the wall, tried to blend in with the world around him. The footsteps grew louder, and Naruto prayed to all the gods that he would not be noticed. It seemed that fate had decided to take pity on the boy this time, and the man passed by without noticing the cowering child. But the child looked at the man very well, wiping his tear-stained eyes several times, wanting to make sure that all this was real. The man who passed by was dressed in a normal Jonin uniform, but over it he wore a snow-white cloak with flames on the edging, and on the back, in large red letters, was the kanji, Sidai Mu Huo Ying, which meant, 4th Shadow of Fire, or 4th Hokage. Yo Yondaime Hokage. The blonde couldn't suppress a surprised cry, causing the man to turn around. Well, something like that, I don't know, maybe it's not exactly what Dante wanted, but that's how I imagine it. Please leave reviews and criticism. Chapter 2. Yo Yondaime Hokage. Naruto stammered in shock, looking at the man who had turned around with his tear-stained eyes. The adult's blue eyes met the same ones, only small and swollen from long tears. There was an awkward pause outside. The older blonde couldn't understand what kind of parents would let a small child wander the streets at night, and the child was puzzled as to why the deceased 4th Hokage had suddenly appeared in Konoha. Naruto frowned, trying to force his brain to work and find an explanation for such a strange phenomenon. The explanation came soon enough. Since the 4th Hokage had died long ago, he couldn't stand here and look at him now, therefore this. Pointing his finger at the 4th, who recoiled from surprise and crawling towards the wall, Naruto screamed hysterically, shaking his head from side to side, hoping to drive away the ghost. Don't come near me. I won't do it anymore. I don't want to die. Shielding himself with his hands in front of him in a protective gesture, the little blonde screamed at the man who had already recovered from the shock and was now approaching him. The Hokage was confused for a second by the child's statement, but attributed it to an incomprehensible fear and, carefully, so as not to frighten the boy even more, approached and sat down next to him, thus finding himself on the same level as him. Shish, baby, everything is fine, everything is fine. No one is going to harm you, much less kill you. Everything is fine, the blonde whispered, slowly bringing his hand to the terrified child. At the very last moment, Naruto pulled back and muttered something completely surprising and incomprehensible. But you, the 4th Hokage has been dead for a long time, which means you are a ghost. I don't like ghosts, I'm afraid of them. Tears began to flow down the boy's cheeks with renewed vigor. No, kid, I haven't died yet, and I don't plan to. Here, the man extended his hand to the blonde, you can see for yourself that I'm a living person. Naruto answered him with a moment of silence, after which he slowly and carefully, as if afraid of being disappointed and getting hit, extended his hand. The small palm touched the adult's hand, and the boy froze. It was warm. Therefore, the Yondaime Hokage was not a ghost. Naruto had nothing to fear, nothing threatened him. The thought that it was he who might have died did not even cross the little head, and the baby smiled happily, wiping the tears still running down his cheeks with the sleeve of his torn shirt. By the way, my name is Minato Namikaze, and what is your name? I haven't seen you in Konoha before. The blonde asked the boy in a calm, curious voice, giving him a gentle smile. Naruto Uzumaki, but everyone calls me a demon and constantly beats me or looks at me with disdain. I don't understand why, the kid muttered resentfully, looking away from the surprised face of the 4th with his blue eyes. Really? Is that all? Is that why you're in this state? Receiving an affirmative nod from the child, Minato thought, what did you do that they treat you like this? In response, Naruto just shrugged and quietly sobbed, remembering the happy moments of his short life. Well, okay, the fourth said, more to himself than to the boy, and, taking his strange acquaintance by the hand, asked, can you walk? You need to be shown to the doctors, you're covered in blood. The kid's eyes widened at this harmless statement and he shook his head, expressing his disagreement. Minato ignored this and tried to force the child to stand up, to which he received only stubborn resistance and some sounds similar to suppressed crying. Deciding that he would definitely sort out all the oddities associated with Naruto, the blonde picked up the resisting child and, throwing him over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes, carried him to the hospital. Meanwhile in Konoha, where Naruto came from. 5 drunk not so drunk anymore, Jonin stared in a stupor at the empty space where the small, bleeding from numerous cuts and bruises Jinchuriki used to be. After the hellish combination of elemental techniques that the men used to take revenge on the demon, a 5-colored glow in the shape of a funnel appeared around the boy. Now that the light dissipated and the dust settled, in the place of the boy, scarlet chakra hovered in the air, emitting a furious wave of bloodlust. This chakra undoubtedly belonged to the Kyuubi no Yoko, previously sealed in the body of a defenseless child. Now that the boy was gone, there was nothing to restrain the bloodthirsty demon, and with each passing minute, he gradually assumed his usual form of a giant 9-tailed fox. What have we done? This boy was holding back the 9-tailed beast, and we killed him. One of the Jonin who participated in the exorcism of the demon screamed in horror. Finally, the fox fully recovered and, letting out a satisfied roar, brought his weight down on Konoha with all 4 paws, destroying houses and stepping with his huge paw on the street where drunk Jonins had been having fun 5 minutes ago. All that was left of the bad guys was blood smeared on the ground and pieces of torn uniforms. Panic broke out in the village, just like 8 years ago. It was impossible to tell where an adult was, where a child was, where the dead were, where the living were. People, like ants in the rain, ran out into the street, cried, tried to find their children among the running crowd, dodging the collapsing walls of buildings. All around, one could hear children crying, screams for help and endless questions. What happened to the Jinchuriki? Did he go crazy? No. He disappeared. The boy is nowhere to be seen. The 4th Hokage died. Who will stop the demon now? What will happen now? What to do? Damn. You should have protected the boy, not been angry with him, Naruto. Forgive me, please, come back. Yes, people never appreciate what they have, and as soon as this something disappears, they start crying, asking for forgiveness and begging for it to come back. But the boy will not return to this world. He ended up in a place very different from this one, and he does not want to relive all those horrors again. In Konoha, where Naruto was transported, and where the 4th is alive. Minato Namikaze sat on a small chair next to the bed, where the little foundling was resting, sweetly snoring. On the way to the hospital, the boy, tired from the events of a difficult night and warmed up on Minato's shoulder, stopped resisting and plunged into the world of Morpheus, thanks to which the doctors were able to examine him normally and provide first aid. The unfortunate child had 3 broken ribs, a broken kidney, a dislocated ankle, and multiple hematomas were found all over his small body. Konoha doctors had never seen such injuries found in an 8-year-old child. Now little Naruto was resting in a hospital room, a drip line was running from his little hand, and bandages decorated almost his entire body. Minato Namikaze was sitting next to the boy and couldn't take his eyes off him. The child seemed so beaten down, helpless, and in appearance strongly resembled Namikaze. The 4th Hokage looked closely at the blonde, and all sorts of thoughts were spinning in his head. Could this unfortunate kid be a spy for another village? Reason told him that anything was possible, but Minato flatly refused to believe it. Why did the child call himself Uzumaki? After all, this clan had long been exterminated and only Kushina, the Jinchuriki of the 9-tailed and Minato's wife, had the honor of bearing this surname. What did the kid mean when he said that everyone hated him, beat him and called him a demon? What bastards inflicted such injuries on an 8-year-old child, and how could the kid even move in such a state? If he wasn't a spy, which Minato was sure of with all his heart, then why had Minato, never seen him in Konoha? And finally, why the hell was the kid scared of him and called him a ghost? There were a whole bunch of questions in Namikaze's head right now, and not a single answer. But he wouldn't be the 4th Hokage if he couldn't find an explanation for everything that had happened. After all, what was important at the moment was for Naruto to recover, and then he could ask the child and, having found out something important and interesting, find answers to countless questions. Leave reviews and criticism. Chapter 3. The fourth Hokage's head was now full of questions and no answers. He sighed and looked at the sleeping boy for the 100th time, pressing his fingers to his temples, trying to force his brain to work and finally explain the series of all the incomprehensible phenomena. Why demon? Why ghost? Why Uzumaki? Wait, but really, why Uzumaki? As far as Minato remembered, this entire powerful clan, based on sealing techniques, was destroyed almost immediately after Kushina moved, that is, she was forced to move to Konoha and, if the blonde's memory did not fail him, the distinguishing feature of this clan was red, or rather, the color of ripe cherries, hair. But this boy was blonde, so what? Did this fact mean that the child was lying? Minato was not sure. The blonde's train of thought was interrupted by the creaking of the door opening. Turning his head, Namikaze saw a young nurse shifting unsteadily from one foot to the other. Sorry, Hokage-sama, but visiting hours are over, could you please leave the room? A little the girl asked hesitantly, for which she received a gentle, slightly sad, smile from the blonde. Okay, I'll leave now, Minato said, reluctantly getting up from his chair and heading for the door. Oh, and before I forget, tell the head doctor to take the boy's blood to check for the presence of Uzumaki clan genes in it. My wife will come as soon as she can. The nurse nodded and, casting a shy glance at the Hokage, headed to the next room. Tadaima, I'm home, Minato shouted, crossing the threshold of a small mansion and closing the door behind him. The next second, he felt an incredibly dark aura and a thirst for blood. Bending down, the blonde at the very last moment dodged a frying pan flying at him at the speed of sound. The aluminum kitchen utensil hit the steel door hard and, making a light creaking sound, fell to the floor. Damn it, I was so busy thinking about Naruto that I didn't warn Kushina at all that I would be back late. Closer to the morning, anyway, panicked thoughts flashed through the blonde's head. Na-mi-ka-z. An angry roar was heard, and an enraged scarlet-haired girl came out of the kitchen. Her long hair stood on end and swayed menacingly, her eyes flashed lightning, and her hand was clutching another frying pan. The blonde swallowed nervously, realizing that his wife would hardly listen to his explanations, rather, she would simply kill him, that's all. Kushina. Hello, honey. The Hokage put his hands forward, hoping to somehow protect himself and stay alive. Where have you been hanging out all night? Have you looked at your watch lately? The scarlet-haired girl squeezed the handle of the frying pan, making it clear that if Minato didn't find a good reason, then his life, full of colors and exciting moments, would be cut short forever. Sunshine, I'll explain everything now, the Hokage smiled nervously. You see, I was just walking home, but in one of the alleys an 8-year-old boy, whom I had never seen before, called out to me. The kid was covered in blood and was crying uncontrollably. When I approached him, and he told his wife the whole story, starting from how he met Naruto and ending with a request to go to the hospital and give blood for comparison. Kushina, whose anger had disappeared without a trace and whose face now showed only surprise and curiosity, nodded understandingly and smiled. Okay, I'll go to the clinic tomorrow. Or rather, today. But first you'll go to the kitchen and eat, after which we'll go to bed. Here she yawned sweetly and rubbed her eyes. There's an hour left until dawn. We need to at least get some sleep. The girl straightened her nightgown and, beckoning her husband to follow her, went to the kitchen, where a pot of food stood, covered with a lid and wrapped in all sorts of towels, waiting for Minato to return. Some time later delicious. Thank you, Sunshine, you're the best. Having finished his meal, the fourth Hokage smiled contentedly. His wife did not answer. Kushina, supporting her head with her hand and leaning her elbows on the table, closed her eyes and snored sweetly. She's so exhausted today. She was still waiting for me, worried. I wonder if she ate anything herself. Minato carefully kissed his wife on the forehead and, picking her up in his arms, went to the bedroom with a gentle, loving smile. Yo, Tsunade-sama. The scarlet-haired girl greeted him, happily raising her hand and smiling from ear to ear, entering the head doctor's office. Yo, Kushina, you finally came. Knowing your hatred of needles, it's quite surprising. The busty blonde in a white coat said with a smile, who, in addition to working as the head doctor at the Konoha hospital, was also the personal doctor of the fourth Hokage's family. Brr, don't remind me why I'm here, Tsunade-sama. The girl shuddered and smiled. Although I hate such procedures, Minato asked me to do this, and I simply cannot refuse him. Besides, If this boy Minato told me about is really Uzumaki, this will allow us to solve many of the lingering problems. You mean the nine-tailed one? The blonde inquired and, having received an affirmative nod from the patient, sighed, he's still just a child, wouldn't it be too cruel? Even you were older then. Well, that's true, the girl said uncertainly, but quickly recovered, because the guys of our clan were such cowards and only put the seal on girls. Every time it was time to give birth, the nine-tailed fox tried to break free. I don't want Konoha to suffer, so I'm looking for someone to whom I can trust this power and I won't have to worry about giving birth. Kushina said and added very quietly, Minato and I, we really want a child, but because of this thing inside me, we're afraid to do it, because the fox won't miss the opportunity to get out, and there's no guarantee that Minato will be able to contain it. So you decided to use an innocent child as a vessel? The doctor asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't know. I don't want to make a child like me, but I also want to finally become a mother. Minato and I will never abandon this boy, in any case. I know what it's like to be a demon carrier. At the end of her explanation, Kushina's voice trembled, and she covered her face with her hands. Well, in any case, we don't know yet whether the boy is Uzumaki. Okay. Give me your hand, the blonde demanded with a smile, taking a syringe, a tourniquet and alcohol from the nightstand. Kushina turned pale and, squinting her eyes, as she had once long ago in childhood, extended her hand. A few minutes later See, it doesn't hurt at all, and you were so scared. A good-natured laugh was heard from behind the open door. The fourth Hokage's wife came out of the head doctor's office, smiling and clutching a cotton pad resting on her vein. I'll probably never get used to it. I've donated blood so many times, but the feeling of fear that it will hurt doesn't go away. Kushina laughed and, thanking Tsunade for the work she had done, headed to room number 311, where, as Tsunade reported, that same Naruto was supposed to be. 308, 309, 310, and here is room number 311, let's see. Namikaze carefully opened the door and saw an empty room. That's strange. I'm sure Tsunade-sama said number 311, no. Where is this Naruto then? Kushina said in surprise, walking into the room in search of the boy. Then she noticed that the window was slightly open and, wondering where an 8-year-old injured child could have gone, looked out into the street. The next moment, Kushina felt some kind of liquid on her hand and brought it to her face to see a small scarlet drop, suspiciously similar to blood. Oh, no, Tsunade-sama. The scarlet-haired girl quickly ran out of the room, hoping that it was not too late. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 4. Naruto. The door to the ward opened slightly, and a pretty young woman appeared on the threshold, whose scarlet hair reached her ankles. Strange. Where is this boy? She said in surprise, looking around the empty ward. Here she noticed that the window was slightly open and, wondering where the 8-year-old wounded child could have gone, she looked out into the street, leaning her elbows on the windowsill. The next moment, Kushina felt her palm touch something wet, viscous and slightly warm. Raising her hand, the fourth Hokage's wife saw a small red spot on her palm, suspiciously similar to blood. Having carefully examined the small ward in which the boy should have been, the girl discovered several more blood stains leading from the bed to the windowsill. Her brain told her that there were two options in this situation. Someone really needed the child Minato had found, or the boy didn't like something, got scared, needed to go somewhere, and he ran away from the hospital. According to Tsunade, in such a state the child would not even be able to move normally for a long time, which meant that the idea of escaping was out of the question. Tsunade-sama. The scarlet-haired girl quickly ran out of the room, hoping that it was not too late. A small blonde child, who looked to be about 7 or 8 years old, leaned against the walls of houses and held his chest with his hand, trudging with a confused step along the back streets, where almost no sunlight penetrated. Naruto understood perfectly well that if he met one of the adults who particularly hated him, he would end up in the hospital again if he did not go to the other world. The blonde sighed quietly and squeezed the bloody bandages on his chest with his fingers, trying to stop the bleeding from the open wound. Naruto's POV. I opened my eyes and didn't immediately realize where I was. What the hell had happened to me this time? The last thing I remembered was the fourth Hokage throwing me over his shoulder and carrying me to the hospital, where I was apparently now. But wait, the fourth Hokage. How? He died. What? Oh, 8 years ago. Shit, what happened? Okay, Naruto, calm down and remember what happened last night. Well, I decided to play a little joke on the souvenir seller, because the day before yesterday, when I was looking at animal masks, This man pushed me, yelled at me, called me a demon, and threw a fox mask at me. Yeah, that was so offensive. I didn't do anything, I was just looking. Deciding to annoy him a little and slightly spoil his shop, I got out a can of blue-green paint and, waiting for nightfall, began to paint his shop. Haha, it would be funny to see his reaction in the morning. True, after this, I will most likely be taken to Old Man Third again, but at least these adults will remember me for a long time and, perhaps, will stop picking on me. Okay, I was thinking about something. I had almost finished my harmless prank, when suddenly 5 drunk men crawled out from around the corner. They were staggering at every step and humming a song about some reeds, I think. Deciding not to catch their eye, I ran home. Unfortunately for me, these adults noticed me and, throwing out the now so familiar demon, ran after me. Jumping from one roof to another, I slipped and fell to the ground. Painfully, these men appeared in front of me in the blink of an eye and, breathing fumes and shouting all sorts of bad words and curses at me, pinned me to the ground with their feet and started kicking. I had already gotten used to this attitude and learned not to scream, despite the unbearable pain. However, these adults were especially cruel, and I could not suppress the cries of pain, causing them to laugh joyfully. When they were distracted by something, I tried to run away, but they quickly surrounded me and started making seals. Stop. They wanted to kill me using a combination of elemental techniques, but instead of pain I saw a white light, which soon sparkled with all the colors of the rainbow. How beautiful it was, so many colors. When the effect of the technique ended, there were no uncles around, but the 4th Hokage walked past, as if he had not died. I remember that I could not resist screaming, to which he turned around and came up to me. I do not remember what exactly he asked me, but it ended with him picking me up in his arms and carrying me, as he said, to the Konoha hospital. Well, now everything falls into place. Those Jonins simply used some kind of genjutsu technique. They probably expected the 4th to kill me, or that I would go crazy and be killed. In any case, everything that happened was a lie. I'm still Uzumaki Naruto, I still live in Konoha, the 4th Hokage is still dead, and I'm still hated by my home village, well, except for Old Man Third, Iruka-sensei and the ramen seller, Old Man Tuki and his daughter Ayame. Oh, since I got into genjutsu, it means my body was lying on the street, and someone decided to take me to the hospital. Thanks to that person, of course, but I can't stand the smell of medicine, injections and this stupid hospital gown that just tries to come apart in the most delicate places. So, it won't be possible to leave the hospital unnoticed, so I need to escape through the window. No sooner said than done. I unhooked the IV from my arm and, somehow getting to my feet, wandered to the window. Unfortunately, at the moment when I tried to get out of bed, the wound on my chest opened up and the bandages turned red. Deciding not to waste time, since all my injuries heal like a dog, I climbed out the window and ran, or rather, trudged to my favorite dorm. End of Naruto. Minato sat in his office, staring at the stack of reports and various documents that had piled up on his desk. This was one of the biggest downsides to being Hokage, as the piles of reports were growing daily and it was impossible to clear them all out in one day. Minato sighed and, having told the mountain of paperwork everything he thought about it, made a seal. There was a lazy pop, and 3 more Minatos appeared in the Hokage's office. The clones looked at the original with genuine hatred and, muttering something under their breath about the exploitation of labor, began to sort through the mountains of paper. Minato grinned triumphantly and closed his eyes, putting his feet on the desk. A few minutes later, the door to the Hokage's office opened without knocking, and the same young nurse who asked him to leave Naruto's room appeared on the threshold. Hokage-sama. The girl cried out excitedly, and Minato managed to take on the appearance of a working man at the last moment. Hokage-sama. That boy you brought to the hospital yesterday. He disappeared. What do you mean, he disappeared? The blonde slapped his palm on the table, greatly frightening the nurse, because it was very rare to see the 4th Hokage angry or irritated and, as a rule, it did not bode well. Well, your wife came to the hospital to donate blood, after which she decided to look into the boy's room, but when she opened the door there was no one in the room, and there were small drops of blood on the floor. Most likely, one of the baby's many wounds opened up, the girl rattled off, not wanting to anger the Hokage even more. Minato tiredly rubbed the bridge of his nose. Oh my god, okay, I'll send someone to search, and you tell Tsunade not to delay with the test. They took Naruto's blood, right? Namikaze ordered, having received a nod from the nurse, and, having let the girl go, looked out the window. Naruto, who are you? Minato thought and, giving the shadow clones the task of continuing to sort through the reports, disappeared from the office in a yellow flash. Naruto approached the dorm and stopped at the door to his small room. Sighing, the boy pulled the handle and was surprised when the door did not budge, because he almost never bothered to lock it, leaving it open. Therefore, such an unexpected phenomenon somewhat surprised the blonde. Strange, the boy thought and walked around the dorm, going out onto a tiny balcony, from which it was easy to get into the apartment. The kid quickly climbed onto the balcony railing and pushed the door into the house. The picture that appeared before him stunned the little blonde. The room was absolutely clean, not a single can of eaten ramen or sour milk, but that was not what surprised the child so much. The room was full of various furniture and a TV, which Naruto had never had before. The blue eyes widened in shock, after which they fixed their gaze on the mirror standing next to the dresser. Here Naruto was completely confused, because 6 of those familiar stripes that had decorated his cheeks since birth had disappeared. While the baby stood in a stupor in the middle of the room, looking at his reflection in the mirror, a busty lady appeared on the threshold, clearly having come out of the shower, since her body and hair were decorated with towels. A minute of tense silence. Who are you and what are you doing here? The lady screamed, throwing a comb at the frightened child. Sorry, ma'am, but I actually live here. Naruto shouted back, dodging various projectiles, which angered the woman even more. I live here. The lady got furious, picking up a broom and throwing Naruto out into the street. Once outside his home, the boy blinked in confusion and crouched down, resting his head on his knees. Confusion soon gave way to righteous anger, for this small room was the only place Naruto could feel safe. Now some woman she decided to take away the last thing from him. This is my room, and I won't give it to you, auntie. Get out of there, Naruto shouted at the top of his lungs, attracting the attention of passers-by. The woman's reaction was instantaneous, and within seconds the balcony door opened, revealing a lady red with anger. This is my apartment. I live here, understand? She yelled threateningly, clearly clutching the rolling pin in her hands, and if you start to make trouble, I'll tell Master Hokage everything. Then we'll see. I don't think your parents will like this. Naruto flinched as if he had been hit, because everyone in Konoha knew that he was an orphan. However, the boy quickly recovered and, holding back the tears of pain that had welled up in his eyes, confidently stamped his foot. Come on, old man third will support me 100%. The lady blinked in surprise at the boy's statement, after which she looked at the little boy with apprehension. Hey, kid, you didn't escape from a mental hospital by any chance, did you? What time period do you live in? Konoha has been ruled by the fourth for how many years now? You were the one who escaped from the hospital. The fourth died 8 years ago, and now the Hokage has become the third again. Naruto did not remain in debt, but now his voice had lost its former confidence. The silhouette of the dead Hokage flashed before the boy's eyes again, his gentle eyes and the voice promising that everything would be fine. Was this not an illusion, or what? Naruto bit his lip nervously, thinking about the latest developments. Naruto. A slightly angry voice called out to him, and the kid turned around to see Minato jumping across the rooftops towards him. Minato's pav. Excuse me, have you seen a 7 or 8-year-old kid with golden hair and blue eyes? Was he still covered in bandages and in a hospital gown? No, I see. Sorry to bother you. Damn it, Naruto, where did you go? I've already questioned almost half of Konoha's residents, and no one has seen you. I don't want to think that you're a spy that you were kidnapped, since you don't look like the former, and as for the latter, the best shinobi censors are stationed all around Konoha, who simply couldn't help but notice suspicious faces. So where are you? Did you hear some boy come to the dorm and tell Madame Rose that this is his apartment? I heard a girl whisper, gossiping about something with her friend. Now this is interesting, seriously, this has been going on for 5 minutes already and it is not known who will win. I did not listen to the end of the conversation and simply ran to the nearest dorm, promising myself to put the seal of the God of Thunder on the child. As I approached the dorm, I heard loud but incomprehensible voices actively arguing with each other. Later, the child's voice died down, and the street became deathly silent. I ran faster and finally saw the whole picture with my own eyes. On the balcony of the second floor of the dorm stood an old lady waving a rolling pin. Under the balcony, with his arms crossed and a dissatisfied but slightly confused face, was Naruto, and a group of onlookers crowded around the dorm. Naruto! I shouted, feeling myself getting angry. My voice must have sounded threatening, because the boy flinched and looked at me with a frightened look. End Minato's POV. Naruto nervously turned towards the voice to see the fourth Hokage looking slightly annoyed. However, his anger was clear as day. He had taken Naruto to the hospital, which meant he wanted him to stay there. Naruto, waking up and writing it off as a stupid illusion, had escaped from the hospital, practically breaking the Hokage's direct order. No wonder he was angry now. The kid closed his eyes and curled up into a ball, praying that someone would somehow dispel such a plausible genjutsu. Naruto, what are you doing here? Minato asked in a calm voice, placing his hand protectively on the child's thin shoulder. Just as the little boy was about to say something, a woman standing on the balcony intervened. Oh, Hokage-sama, how good that you were passing by. This kid is probably out of his mind. He said that he lives in my apartment, that you are not the Hokage now, but the third. He escaped from a mental hospital, right? And I would be very grateful if you refrained from such comments. Interrupting the woman, Minato firmly stated and, looking at Naruto, who did not understand anything, continued, don't run away anymore, I will find you anyway. Let's go, kid, you haven't recovered yet. Having picked up the child in his arms, the fourth disappeared from sight, only to reappear in the hospital. At the hospital a few minutes later. I don't want to. Don't. Writhing on Minato's lap, Naruto whined pitifully, looking with wide eyes at the approaching nurse, who was holding a syringe in her hands. You have to. It's just one little shot, Naruto, it's medicine. Minato said soothingly, holding the struggling boy in a lying position, his eyes pleading with the nurse to hurry. I don't need medicine. It will go away on its own, wounds heal quickly. I don't want. Naruto squealed as the needle confidently pierced his body. That's all. The nurse smiled, and Minato winked cheerfully at the boy who was pulling up his pants and grumbling discontentedly. Namikaze's cheerful mood was so infectious that a few seconds later Naruto's eyes were shining with childish joy and carelessness, and a sincere smile was on his face. Minato. The good moment was interrupted by Tsunade's voice, looking into the room. The fourth one turned around and, throwing Naruto a gentle smile, followed the head doctor. Well, what? Are the test results ready? Minato was the first to ask, to which he received a thoughtful look from Tsunade. The results are ready, and they are simply stunning. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 5. Minato. The good moment was interrupted by Tsunade's voice, looking into the room. The fourth one turned around and, throwing Naruto a gentle smile, followed the head doctor. Well, what? Are the test results ready? Minato was the first to ask, to which he received a thoughtful look from Tsunade. The results are ready, and they are simply stunning. A few minutes later in the head doctor's office. I didn't believe it, so I decided that there was some kind of mistake and did the test again, to which I got the same result. I don't know how something like this could have happened, you'll have to sort it out, but I can only say one thing for sure. Tsunade suddenly fell silent and looked intently at Minato, not knowing how to continue. Well, the blonde waved his hand, urging the doctor to finish the sentence, since he liked waiting the least. In short, Naruto is your son, Konoha's best medic, stunned the fourth, finally gathering her courage. There was a tense, deathly silence in the office for about a minute, and the Hokage stared blankly at Tsunade, trying to figure out if she was serious or just trying to play a joke on him. His brain absolutely refused to accept and understand such unexpected news, so Minato just sat in his chair, trying to comprehend everything and, making sure he heard correctly, choose the right words. What do you mean? This isn't a mistake. Namikaze croaked barely audibly when the first stage of stunnedness passed and his brain began to work. No mistake, Senju answered just as quietly but confidently and, noticing 1,001 questions in the Hokage's blue eyes, she hurried to explain everything. As I already said, when the DNA results were ready, I did not believe the results and did a repeat test, deciding to compare Naruto's DNA not only with Kushina's blood, but also with yours. To be sure, so to speak. But how? You know perfectly well that before having a child, Kushina wanted to reseal the fox. It's simply impossible. Minato, the percentage of coincidence is 99.9999%. This only happens between a child and his parents, the head doctor interrupted Minato, who was starting to get angry from not understanding the situation. You cannot argue with the results of the analysis. Even if it is difficult for you to accept and believe it, the fact remains a fact. Naruto is your and Kushina's son. Surprisingly, the fourth did not argue any more or try to find a discrepancy or mistake. Instead, he simply stood up and, casting a tired look at the blonde from all this confusion, declared that he needed to think and figure everything out. Leaving the head doctor's office, Namikaze went to the Hokage Tower. After all, he still had several unsigned reports and this was a great opportunity to get distracted a little and get his thoughts in order. Minato. Kushina had already tried to attract her husband's attention for the 15th time, but he seemed to be on another planet and did not want to return to Earth. Finally, the mistress of the bloody seas got tired of talking to the wall. Namikaze Minato. The scarlet-haired girl screamed at the top of her lungs, rewarding her husband with a slap for good measure. Ow, Kushina. Damn, that hurts. The blonde reacted instantly, rubbing the bump that had appeared on his forehead. I'm actually the Hokage, you shouldn't hit me. Drilling his wife with an offended look, Minato muttered childishly. The scarlet-haired girl sighed and handed him a cold spoon to at least slightly calm the pulsating bump. Having moved the chair closer to her husband, the girl laid her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes. For some time they sat in complete silence. Are you thinking about Naruto? She asked tiredly and, having received an affirmative nod, continued, yes. How is that even possible? Well, I mean, Kushina did not find the strength to finish the sentence. And why? So everything is clear, just not clear. Flashback. Well, what did Tsunade-sama say? Namikaze asked her husband who had just crossed the threshold of the house, does Naruto really belong to the Uzumaki clan? The girl was burning with impatience, but Minato only looked at her strangely and, without answering the question, went into the kitchen. It's strange. What's wrong with him? Kushina muttered under her breath, confused, since her husband had never behaved like this before. Blaming it all on the immense amount of paperwork, the girl followed the fourth and, putting on an apron, began to heat up the food. 15 minutes later Minato, is something bothering you? The scarlet-haired girl asked with concern, looking at Minato's thoughtful face, you can tell me, you know. Together we'll think of something. She confidently raised her hand clenched into a fist and smiled. Namikaze didn't answer. You're already eating your 10th onigiri. What happened anyway? Kushina folded her arms across her chest, making it clear that she wouldn't leave him alone until she knew the truth. Minato sighed and, rummaging through the pockets of his famous coat, pulled out a small piece of paper folded in half and handed it to his wife. She took it and immediately began to read. With each line she read, her expression became more and more puzzled and finally, she said quietly, in complete shock. Is that our true Naruto? He's really our son? Minato nodded and sighed. Oh, Kushina sat down on a chair, completely lost and not understanding anything. End flashback. I can't say what I'm feeling at all. Minato suddenly broke the silence, carefully stroking his wife's hair. When I found out about this, I was in a kind of stupor, and I still am now, but at the same time, I felt joy. Yeah, I felt the same way. Kushina confirmed, no matter how, but he is still our son. Just think, we are parents. This time the girl smiled and her eyes sparkled with happiness. Naruto, he looks so much like you, just a smaller copy. Noticing her husband's interested look, she confirmed, yes. I visited him today, but he was sleeping at that moment. But the boy's face is oval like mine. The couple laughed. And yet I'm tormented by the question, who is he? No, we've already found out who he is. Where is he from? While I was sorting through mountains of reports, I remembered our meeting with him. Naruto then shied away from me and called me a ghost. And today, when I found him near the dorm, Madame Rose said that Naruto said that the Hokage is now the third. All this is very interesting. Maybe he's from another world. Kushina suggested innocently, why not? Stranger things happen. In response, Minato rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Well, at least this theory has a right to exist, since it explains Naruto's words and reaction. Okay, it's too late now. We need to go to bed, and tomorrow morning you and I will visit Naruto and ask about everything, okay? Asked the fourth, already knowing what the answer would be. I was just about to suggest it. Kushina shouted, smiling. Naruto sat on the hospital bed, arms crossed over his chest and looking out the window with a displeased expression. He wasn't allowed to leave the hospital for a week, and the doctor threatened that if Naruto tried to escape again, she would tie him to the bed and leave him there for a month. Naturally, the kid immediately promised to stay put and not go anywhere, because the very thought of a month-long hospital arrest made his already disheveled hair stand on end. Even though Naruto had vowed to stay in the hospital, even an hour locked up inside seemed like hell to the restless boy, let alone a week. There were no entertaining games or magazines in the hospital, and the only entertainment for the little boy were the birds fluttering from branch to branch outside the window and humming funny melodies. Here one of the birds, the youngest one, apparently clumsily spread its wings and did something like a jump flight to another branch. Having reached the goal with its paws, the bird was happy and folded its wings too early, which caused it to lose its balance and hang on the branch upside down, as if parodying circus artists on a trapeze. All this caused Naruto, who was watching them, to smile, which was soon replaced by mischievous laughter. At that moment, there was a knock on the ward and, without waiting for an answer, they entered. Minato appeared on the threshold, accompanied by a rather cute girl, whose scarlet hair flowed beautifully down her back and shoulders and reached almost to her ankles. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 6. The door to room 311 creaked open, distracting the fair-haired child from his bird watching. Turning around at the sound, the child saw the fourth Hokage, who had dragged him to this terribly boring place, the hospital, and a pretty girl whose scarlet hair reached her ankles. Hello. Are you here to see me? Naruto asked timidly, immediately realizing what a stupid thing he had said, since the fourth and his companion would hardly make a mistake with the right door. But how was a small child, who was hated by everyone and everything a few days ago, supposed to react? No one had ever come to see him. Yes. Hello, Naruto, the girl smiled sweetly, walking into the room and sitting down on a chair next to the boy's bed. Minato simply stood next to his wife. Naruto nodded at the greeting and turned his blue eyes to the Hokage, going over all the possible reasons for his visit in his head. But he hadn't done anything wrong, so he was unlikely to get into trouble. At least, that's what the kid thought, until he remembered one ill-fated kiosk that he had so diligently painted 2 days ago and near which all the strange things had started. How are you feeling? Does anything hurt? Minato's calm voice brought the boy back to the real world. Excellent, Naruto answered automatically, jumping up sharply on the bed, after which he fell back down on it with a cry, holding his chest and coughing painfully. Shish, you haven't recovered yet, so try not to make any sudden movements. Here, drink this, Minato said in a gentle tone, but one that did not tolerate objections, handing the child a glass of water. Naruto drank just a little bit, after which he calmed down and sat down on the bed with an embarrassed look. Sorry, the boy muttered quietly and, looking out the window, continued, I'm completely fine, that's true. My chest and right arm are just a little sore, but it will pass soon. All my wounds heal instantly, so there's nothing to worry about. And anyway, if something serious happens to me, no one will notice anyway. Naruto explained cheerfully, awkwardly scratching his neck with his hand. Even if you have fast regeneration. Kushina lowered her head and covered her eyes with her hair, quietly said, after which Minato and Naruto felt an evil aura, even if that is so. You should not treat your health with such indifference. You are still a child, you have your whole life ahead of you. What will happen to your life if? Kushina could not finish, her eyes flashed lightning, and her hands clenched into fists. Don't you dare say something like that. Sorry, Naruto squeaked in fear, pressing himself into the bed, I just told the truth. I recover quickly and no one needs me. My parents died when the demon fox attacked Konoha. And the whole village disliked me for some reason. It's probably because of my eternal pranks. But I don't want to just disappear like that. At this point the trembling disappeared from the boy's voice, and his eyes lit up with determination. I will try very hard and I will definitely become Hokage. I will surpass all the previous ones. I can do it. You want to become Hokage, then? Minato said thoughtfully, raising his hand to his face. Well, I think you can do it. He winked at the blonde child, who looked up at him in disbelief. You really think so? You're not going to laugh at me? Naruto asked in shock, with a little hope in his voice, and Minato nodded cautiously. After this harmless gesture from the adult, something amazing happened. Instead of smiling, the child pursed his lips and lowered his head. His arms wrapped around his skinny little body, and his shoulders began to tremble slightly. Minato looked at his wife in confusion, trying to figure out what he had said wrong. Hey, kid, what happened? Everything is fine. Kushina reached out to the boy and gently took his chin, forcing him to look at her. Naruto's blue eyes turned red, and salty transparent drops streamed down his face. What are you saying? I didn't say anything bad, Minato said tenderly, putting his hand on the child's blonde head and ruffling his unruly hair. Naruto smiled weakly and sobbed again. No one has ever told me that. They all laughed at me, and I just can't believe it. Naruto shared, choking on tears, arigato. Instead of answering, Minato and Kushina, without saying a word, pulled the unfortunate child into a warm embrace, letting him cry out all the tears of pain and relief. When the baby calmed down a little, he realized how pathetic he must look now and, blushing, quickly slipped out of the embrace. Well, I'm already going to the academy, and now I'm sitting here and crying like a girl. Naruto grinned, wiping away his tears. Thank you very much, now I feel more confident. Naruto exhaled happily. Suddenly his good mood disappeared somewhere, and fear was reflected on his face. Holy shit, Academy, Iruka-sensei will kill me. XO, Naruto shouted, jumping out of bed and, not paying attention to the hospital gown, saying, excuse me, I have to run. He ran out of the ward, leaving the dumbfounded adults sitting inside. Naruto, the fourth, was the first to come to his senses and, running out of the room, began to catch up with the fleeing child. Come back. Unfortunately, Naruto never liked to follow orders and, seeing the fourth Hokage chasing him from behind, he increased his speed, running as fast as he could through the hospital. As the child was running past the head doctor's office, the door opened and Tsunade appeared in the hallway, holding a large stack of some papers in her hands. She appeared so unexpectedly that poor Naruto did not have time to brake and crashed into the woman at full speed. Many sheets of paper flew up into the air and began to gracefully fall to the floor. Naruto, throwing out a short, sorry, got to his feet and rushed through the corridors again. Immediately after that, Minato came around the corner and, running around Tsunade, who was sitting on the floor and in a daze, disappeared from sight. Minato, how many times do I have to tell you not to run around the hospital? The best medic, having come to her senses, screamed, blushing with anger and clenching her hands into fists. Namikaze, who had clearly heard the blonde's angry tirade, got goosebumps and made a mental note to avoid the head doctor's office for a while. The fourth managed to catch the little fugitive only on the street, where he could safely use the teleportation technique, and where he did not have to constantly weave between people. Picking Naruto up and tucking him under his arm, Minato, with a sense of accomplishment, walked back to the hospital, trying to ignore his son's pleas and resistance. When they got to Naruto's room, both blondes looked rather angry and tired. Minato put the boy down on the bed and measured him with a displeased look, in which, just a little, there was a splash of curiosity. What was that? Kushina asked the boy, crossing her arms over her chest and frowning. You can't make any sudden movements, let alone run. The wounds might open up again. I didn't mean to. Naruto whined pitifully. Please let me go. Iruka-sensei will kill me if I skip class again. Minato and Kushina exchanged glances. Sighing, the fourth sat down on the boy's bed and placed his hand on his shoulder. After all, he had come here to check on Naruto and ask him a few questions that could shed some light on this confusing story. Do you like rice balls? Kushina asked the child without letting her husband say a word, taking out several neat rice balls from the small bag she had been holding in her hands from the very beginning. Naruto's eyes lit up with joy and he quickly nodded, taking one of the balls and immediately shoving it into his mouth. This is delicious, Naruto mumbled while chewing on the bun, for which he received a playful slap on the back of the head from the girl. Don't talk with your mouth full, or you'll choke. Kushina threatened with her finger, smiling affectionately. Naruto only made a dissatisfied and impudent face, after which he began to gobble up the delicacy with even greater zeal. By the way, who are you? I know Yondaime-sama, but I've never seen you, Naruto asked, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. Oh, right, Minato slapped his forehead, we completely forgot. Naruto, this is Kushina, my wife. By the way, she, like you, belongs to the Uzumaki clan, the blonde stuttered casually. Uzumaki, Naruto said thoughtfully, as far as I remember, I am the only one in Konoha with such a last name. And I have no relatives, since everyone died or perished long ago. The kid stared at Kushina in confusion, who felt uneasy from such close attention. Well, when Minato and I got married, I became Namikaze, but that doesn't change the story of my origin, the girl smiled, closing her eyes. Yes, probably, the child said after some thought, once again biting his sharp teeth into the rice ball. Hokage-sama. Call me Minato, the older blonde asked, interrupting the boy and smiling affectionately. Minato-san, what about the academy, and where will I live now? Some woman has taken over my apartment. Naruto asked, frowning in displeasure. Minato and Kushina smiled. Well, first of all, don't worry about the academy. You're skipping classes on the Hokage's orders, and that's a very valid reason. Secondly, since you have nowhere to go, I suggest you stay with us. And thirdly, Naruto, have you seen anything unusual lately? Minato asked. Maybe something that scared you, or something you've never seen before. Some kind of technique, I don't know. If you think about it. The boy thoughtfully rubbed his chin, then clicked his fingers contentedly. Yes. I remember. Before I saw you, 5 guys attacked me. I remember. At the end, they made seals for the technique, and light appeared. It scared me at first, but then there were a lot of colors, and it was beautiful. And when the light disappeared, those guys were gone and you were passing by. Naruto chattered, smiling. So it's true, Minato said barely audibly, but the boy's keen hearing still caught his voice. What's true? Something's wrong. The kid blinked his eyelashes in confusion, looking at the adults with his blue eyes. Nothing. Kushina smiled happily, waving her palm. Minato followed his wife's example and pretended that he hadn't said anything and Naruto had imagined something. No, I want to know. Naruto pouted, sitting comically on the bed. Minato winked cheerfully at the kid and ruffled his hair, and Kushina fished out of the bag the 7th rice ball and, without saying anything, victoriously handed it to Naruto, who was licking his lips. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 7. A playful ray of the sun rising into the sky deftly made its way through the light curtains and fell on the face of a sleeping boy, wrapped in a light blanket up to his ears. The little boy closed his eyes in displeasure and, having tossed and turned on the bed a little more, gave in, opening his sky-blue eyes. Having stretched sweetly and thrown off all the remnants of the desired, but cut short sleep, Naruto sat up in bed and looked out the window. It was already light outside and the birds were singing various melodies of their songs in turn. On the roof of the neighboring building, a March cat was purring his beloved serenade with all the force of his lungs, who could not be driven away by the furious screams of people, nor by the frying pans thrown at him, nor by threats to take Mirka to another place or take him, the cat, to the vet. Young mothers were coming to the playground, pushing a stroller with mischievous, rosy-cheeked toddlers who did not want to sleep. And along the deserted streets, carrying backpacks on their backs, future ninja of the Hidden Leaf were hurrying to the Shinobi Academy. Looking at all this, the fair-haired child smiled a little sadly, because he was stuck in the hospital and could not enjoy life to the fullest. However, the sad smile soon melted away, and was replaced by a smug grin, promising Konoha more than one trouble. Today was one of the most significant days for Naruto. Tsunade Senju, the head doctor of the hospital, finally heard the boy's pleas and agreed to let him go into the wild. Therefore, the 4th Hokage and his explosive, but very sweet wife were supposed to come for him soon. Smiling to himself, Naruto looked at the small calendar again, made sure that the day of discharge had finally arrived and, throwing his hands up in a victory gesture and making his bed, flew off to the hospital shower on the wings of joy. Minato, what color would Naruto like more? Blue or maybe he would prefer orange? Kushina asked her husband's opinion for the 100th time, looking at several overalls, pants and shirts. How should I know? The 4th raised an eyebrow tiredly and, rubbing the bridge of his nose, continued thoughtfully. If we take into account the fact that you turned the baby's room into one continuous, orange, and already bought him a dozen orange t-shirts, I suggest, coloring up the situation a little and buying a blue or green jumpsuit. Minato suggested, looking at the things, but in general, I would first ask him. So much orange is. Hey, don't attack the orange color. The scarlet-haired girl was indignant, not letting her husband finish his sentence. Orange means. Yes, I remember. Orange is the color of your clan, the sun, joy, I think, and something else. Ruffling his head of golden hair, Namikaze finished his wife's sentence, but I just don't understand, what does the sun have to do with orange, it's yellow. At the last comment, Kushina clenched her fists and began to mentally count to 40, after which she calmed down and wandered to the neighboring shelves of clothes. After all, she loved Minato very much and could not stay angry for long over such trifles, and to start a showdown in the store would be at least strange and ugly. Taking with her a couple of blue, green and, of course, orange things, the mistress of the bloody seas contentedly wandered to the checkout. Naruto was actively throwing off his boring hospital clothes, periodically looking out the window, hoping to see familiar figures. Finally, when the boy was completely ready to leave the hospital, a loud poof was heard, and the ward was covered in a snow-white haze. Naruto, in complete shock and bewilderment, pressed himself against the wall, thinking that bad people were going to attack him again. Tabane, how many times do I have to tell you not to use this technique with me? I can't breathe. Naruto recognized this voice right away, despite the obvious notes of irritation. Very soon the boy's guess was confirmed by a small silhouette breaking through the haze to the window and throwing it wide open. The white fog that had filled the entire ward instantly evaporated into the street, revealing a scarlet-haired girl hanging on the windowsill and greedily gulping oxygen, and a slightly agitated fourth Hokage. "How are you, Naruto? Ready to move?" Minato asked, deciding to distract his wife's attention from himself and thereby save his life. Oddly enough, this plan worked, and Kushina, who a minute ago was ready to tear her beloved husband into thousands of pieces, calmed down and looked affectionately at her future son. "That's right, kid, if you need anything, don't be shy and tell us." She awkwardly rubbed her neck and closed her eyes. Minato chuckled slightly, and Naruto looked at the girl in disbelief. He liked her from their very first meeting, but he simply wasn't used to attention from any adult yet. Unbidden tears welled up in the baby's eyes, and he covered his face with his sleeve, not wanting to show his weakness. Minato and Kushina looked at each other in confusion and a little surprise, wondering what they had said wrong this time. Naruto seemed to notice their misunderstanding, and so he hurried to explain. No, don't get me wrong, Dabayo. I just, no one has ever treated me like this before and I'm not used to it, but, holy shit, anyway. Well, I'm happy. Naruto rattled off in one breath, occasionally interrupting his speech with quiet sobs. The fourth Hokage and his wife exchanged glances and, without saying a word, pulled the crying baby into a warm embrace. The child froze in shock for a second, but the next moment, his entire tiny body pressed against the couple, showing that he trusted them unconditionally. It was the happiest moment in the entire life of the little now ex-Jinchuriki. After a good 15 minutes of hugging, the baby finally calmed down and, with reddened from tears, but very happy eyes, looked at the adults. They responded with affectionate smiles. "So, are you ready to go home now?" Minato asked, winking at his son and holding out his hand. The boy narrowed his eyes slyly in response and smiled at Namikaze with a smile that promised a lot of trouble. Finally, the blonde boy gave the fourth his hand, and he helped him get out of bed. A very unusual family left the ward, and soon disappeared from the sight of the working medical staff, going into a spacious house somewhere in the middle of Konoha. Naruto always dreamed of walking down the street like this with his parents, and it seemed that fate had decided to make concessions and give the baby everything he had been deprived of for 8 years since birth. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 8. Two blonde men and a scarlet-haired girl slowly approached a small mansion, located approximately in the center of the hidden leaf. Having passed through the gate, Naruto looked around in amazement. Near the house there was a garden, literally drowning in various flowers. The little ex-Jinchuriki had never seen such beauty in his life. Right next to the house grew a young sakura, in full bloom and slowly dropping delicate pink petals onto the cool ground. Next to the tree, a small pond was dug, in which one could discern the silhouettes of swimming fish. Well, the rest of the garden was full of timid violets, proud roses, important peonies, dahlias, tulips and daffodils, as well as other flowers, the names of which Naruto did not know. Kushina somehow got carried away with floristry, and this is what came of it, the fourth chuckled, noticing the baby's stunned face. "What's wrong?" the scarlet-haired girl responded. There was a clear challenge in her voice, but Minato simply ignored it and smiled at his wife with a disarming smile, which made the girl hesitate for a moment, not knowing what to say. "This is amazing," Naruto muttered barely audibly, looking around the garden with wide eyes. "Really?" Kushina immediately switched her attention to the boy. "Well, as Minato said, I once got carried away with flowers and it seemed funny to me to plant them around the entire perimeter of the garden. There was a lot of trouble with choosing colors, but with the help of Yamanaka-san, everything turned out quite nice." The scarlet-haired girl chirped happily, glad that at least this little one shared her interests. "Okay, this is all great, of course, but Naruto, maybe you should come inside already. I'll show you your room." Mother and son turned their gaze to Minato, who was standing on the threshold of the house, his arms crossed over his chest and his whole appearance showing that the boy would have time to admire the flowers later, but now there were more important things to do. Will I have my own room?" Naruto immediately switched to a new topic, running up to the Hokage like a bullet and looking with his blue eyes into exactly the same ones, only wiser and calmer. Of course. The older blonde couldn't help but smile and ruffle the child's unruly hair. Naruto squealed happily and, without even waiting for the adults, rushed into the house. And where does so much energy come from? Although, he is still a child. I recognize Kushina. Namikaze shook his head, trying to find the fair-haired child inside the apartment, but, unfortunately, the baby was gone without a trace. Naruto. The fourth's wife called the blonde and, without waiting for an answer, began to search the house. Naruto. Come out. Naruto. Minato joined his wife, when he suddenly noticed disheveled strands of golden hair in the very corner of the room. The baby's body was carefully wrapped in a curtain and disguised by a flowerpot. Aha. Where is Naruto? I can't find him anywhere. Winking at Kushina and pointing his finger at the invisible man, Namikaze said thoughtfully, trying his best to play along with the kid. Naruto chuckled softly, but then covered his mouth with his hand. The boy didn't know that he had already been discovered and was unusually proud of his ability to hide. The Namikaze couple walked around for another 10 minutes, after which Kushina got tired of bending over and pretending to search diligently, and so she quietly crept up to the place where the young blonde was hiding, and with a victorious cry, aha! Found it! Grabbed the kid in her tight embrace. Naruto burst into cheerful laughter, and since the sunny child laughed quite infectiously, very soon the entire Hokage family was rolling on the floor, in fits of uncontrollable laughter. Well, Naruto, we've had enough fun. Minato muttered, holding his stomach, which was aching from laughter, with his hand. Now let's go, look at your room, if you don't like anything, tell me we'll think of something. Naruto nodded obediently and, placing his small hand into the fourth's broad one, stomped up to the second floor of the building. Kushina, still laughing, followed the blondes. Cool. The little blonde boy rejoiced, jumping on the large, spacious bed for about half an hour. The orange bedspread had long since slipped onto the floor, but the blonde boy cared little or nothing about it. When Minato and Kushina opened the door to the room, which from now on was rightfully called the children's room, Naruto simply stood there, not believing his eyes. There was everything he could dream of. A bunch of different toys, a TV, a spacious bed and a desk, which was so convenient for drawing, doing homework and all sorts of other sweet things. But most importantly, almost the entire room was orange. The kid couldn't even imagine this, because all the adults who could still listen to him or talk to him normally unanimously claimed that such bright colors only irritate the eye, and do not please it. Naruto honestly tried to understand the meaning of these words, but he could not. Orange. The kid almost idolized this color, and therefore such a surprise pleased him, probably, more than anything else. What is he doing there? Minato asked his wife, looking up from the newspaper and listening to the cries of joy and the creaking of furniture coming from the boy's room. What difference does it make? The main thing is that he likes it. Smiled the scarlet-haired girl standing by the stove. A fragrant smell was coming from the pot, and anyone who entered the fourth's apartment now would say with confidence that something very tasty was cooking there. That's right. It seems like he liked your craving for orange. Minato said cheerfully and immediately dodged the towel thrown at him. Don't attack. Orange color. Kushina said menacingly, but her look showed that she was only amused by the situation and didn't even think of getting angry. At this, the fourth sighed with relief and again buried his face in the Konoha news. Naruto sat on the carpet, holding the figurines of soldiers that he used to fight himself. He soon got tired of voicing the good and bad shinobi and waving his arms, so he moved to the table and picked up his pencils. The first thing that appeared on the blank sheet of paper was a red-orange sun, then white-blue clouds and green grass. Following the landscape, multicolored butterflies and a blonde blot figure appeared on the sheet, clearly denoting the artist himself. Naruto smiled and, knocking his teeth on the pencil, began to carefully draw two more figures next to him, yellow and red. He was probably drawing Minato and Kushina, and if the fourth Hokage somehow resembled himself, then his wife, despite the hellish efforts of the young blonde, was practically drowning in her own hair and somehow raised one hand too frighteningly. Having assessed the picture with a critical look, Naruto drew a bouquet of flowers on Kushina's hand, and now the scarlet-haired fury was angrily swinging a multicolored broom at those looking at her. Now the boy was pleased with the work done and smiled happily. Naruto, go have dinner. Kushina's ringing voice came from the kitchen. The blonde shuddered in surprise, but quickly came to his senses and, licking his lips, rushed to the lower floor. As Naruto ran towards the kitchen, his nose was hit by a delicious smell that the boy couldn't mistake for anything else. Ramen. It was definitely his favorite dish. Itadakimasu, shouted the young fidget and, breaking the chopsticks, was about to grab the noodles from the plate, when suddenly someone's hand stopped him halfway. First, eat something healthier. A salad, for example. Ruffling the boy's hair, Minato said affectionately and, seeing the complete bewilderment in Naruto's eyes, explained, eating ramen on an empty stomach is not very healthy, despite its amazing taste. Save it for an appetizer. The blonde kid couldn't understand how anyone could eat anything other than ramen, but he nodded in agreement and obediently reached for the tomato cucumber salad. Having licked the entire bowl clean of sour cream, Naruto looked questioningly at the fourth and, having received a nod, happily sparkling his eyes, began to gobble up his beloved ramen. The dinner was quite fun. Naruto talked about his dreams, hobbies, and the Namikaze couple listened to him attentively, smiled and encouraged him if the boy was suddenly upset about something. In general, this is the kind of family idol that Naruto dreamed of since childhood. Finally, dinner came to an end, and Kushina began to clear the table. Minato actively helped in this, and Naruto simply watched them and smiled happily. Very soon a yawn escaped from his mouth, and his eyes closed tiredly. Today was a very busy day. No need to torture yourself. Go to your room and get a good night's sleep. Tearing herself away from the mountain of dishes, Kushina said affectionately, "Your pajamas are under the pillow, I hope you like them." Naruto's eyes lit up for a moment, but fatigue took over and the boy just nodded sleepily. Good night, the baby muttered, rubbing his eyes and stomped towards the stairs leading to the second floor. Good night, Naruto. Minato and Kushina left their work and, approaching the boy, gently hugged him and kissed him. The kid blushed and tried to portray a displeased look, like, "I'm already an adult." But it ended with all three of them laughing. "Come on, you need to rest," Minato said with a smile, ruffling Naruto's already messy hair. "I'm planning on taking you to the academy tomorrow, you don't mind, right?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. The kid immediately shook his head and said that he wanted to ask about it himself. "Well then, run to bed," the fourth ordered jokingly. Naruto nodded happily and disappeared on the second floor. The fair-haired child spun around in front of the mirror for half a minute, looking at his new orange pajamas, which had a picture of a very cute frog on them. Pleased with the new item of his nightwear, the boy ran around the room and jumped onto the soft bed, immediately wrapping himself in a soft blanket. In about half a minute, the baby, for the first time in a long time, slept peacefully, having forgotten all the past grievances. The bullying and bad attitude towards him remained in the past. A new life began, in which he was also needed by someone, where no one teased or offended him. A life that he could only dream of before. Well, dreams do come true, you just have to believe in them. Naruto was convinced of this from his own experience. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 9. Naruto woke up early. No, that's not it. He woke up very, very early, which was strange in itself. Sitting up in bed and stretching sweetly, the boy tried to find an explanation for such an unexpected phenomenon, but he couldn't, no matter how hard he tried. In the end, he got tired of thinking, and, having somehow made his bed, he trudged into the bathroom to take a shower and brush his teeth. Now the former Jinchuriki could not get used to the fact that his life had changed dramatically in this world and that someone needed him, so, having bumped into Minato in the bathroom, the little blonde almost screamed in surprise, but, fortunately, he quickly remembered what was what. Naruto. Wiping his face with a fluffy towel, the fourth raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Why did you get up so early?" And indeed, the hands of the small clock, standing timidly on the edge of the washing machine, showed exactly 5:30 a.m. The fair-haired boy whistled in surprise. Of course, he knew that he had broken all his records in getting up, but not by that much. And shrugged his shoulders somewhat embarrassedly. A minute of tense silence hung in the bathroom. No one knew what to say, and there was no topic for a possible dialogue as such. "Oh well, but the day will be longer, right?" The fourth winked mischievously at the confused child, rather clarifying than asking. "Oh yeah," Naruto nodded a little nervously in response and thoughtfully looked Minato up and down. It wasn't that he was at a loss in the Hokage's presence, no, quite the opposite, but there was something about this man that made the young mischief maker think, and this happened extremely rarely with the boy. "The academy opens at 8:30. I think I'll take the day off today. If you want, we can go for a walk after breakfast. You still have plenty of time." Looking into the sky blue eyes, the same as his own, Minato suddenly suggested. The metamorphosis that took place on the child's face revealed the child's joy with all its giblets, so the fourth could not hold back a light chuckle, looking at how the boy tried with all his might to give his face an indifferently calm expression. "I take it you agree?" Namikaze asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear it from the child personally. "Why yes." To make his words more convincing, the boy nodded with all his might and the next second he winced from the pain that pierced his neck. "That's right. Never make such sudden movements. It can cramp the muscles even more." The fourth immediately appeared next to Naruto and began to vigorously rub the child's neck, which made the latter literally howl. Minato understood perfectly well how strong the pain during a cramp could be, and therefore sincerely pitied the unfortunate man, but if the tense muscle was not immediately relaxed, the consequences could be bad. Therefore, the adult continued to knead the blonde's thin neck despite his screams and requests to stop. What's going on here? Kushina suddenly, there's no other way to put it, appeared in the doorway of the ill-fated bathroom, looking at her husband and son with genuine bewilderment. Moreover, the fact that the baby didn't stop screaming alarmed the scarlet-haired girl. Naru. The fourth began, but then fate took pity on the younger blonde and the cramp released his neck. The boy stopped screaming and hung helplessly in the Hokage's arms. Oh no, nothing anymore. Minato happily informed his wife, to which she gave him an uncomprehending look. Okay. The girl exhaled and shook the ladle she had grabbed when she went upstairs. It's good that everything is fine now. I don't understand why you got up so early. She poked the kitchen utensil at her husband, and then at her son, but go have breakfast already, or the pancakes will get cold. Naruto's tongue just stuck out at the statement about pancakes and the boy rushed to the kitchen with the speed of a rocket, as if he hadn't been dying in the Hokage's arms a minute ago. Minato and Kushina could only look at each other and marvel at where the 8-year-old got such energy reserves. However, the fact that Naruto had the blood of Uzumaki Kushina explained a lot. I never listened to what the teacher said, that's probably why I can't do anything. But what can I do if all their explanations are so boring and monotonous that I fall asleep after 10 minutes of the lecture? Besides, no sensei kept me in their class for long. And then Iruka sensei came. He's really good. Naruto swung back and forth on the wooden swing, occasionally glancing at the fourth and noting his reaction to the modest story about his life. To the young blonde's surprise, Minato showed no signs of displeasure and did not mock him. The adult's eyes reflected only understanding and some sympathy. Most likely, it was because of this that the boy decided to open up his experiences to the fourth. Well, Iruka-sensei is very good. When he became my homeroom teacher, he didn't kick me out of the classroom because of my pranks, but ordered me to stay and started the lesson. It's just. Here the kid hesitated and looked at Minato with embarrassment. From all his speeches and lectures, I only remembered that sensei's horoscope sign is Pisces and that he has several hobbies. At this point Minato couldn't help but let out a small laugh, and Naruto smiled awkwardly as well. As I see, you can't stand theory. Then what? Practice? Minato raised an eyebrow questioningly and, not seeing agreement in the child's eyes, understood everything. No, I don't think so. I guess I'm just a worthless ninja with no hope of being recognized, the blonde stuttered. Well, that's too critical of a self-assessment, Minato drawled. I'm sure you'll learn everything yet. I will become Hokage. Even if I remain a student of the academy for the life of my life, I will definitely become Hokage. I will make everyone in the village recognize me. Naruto suddenly burst into such a passionate speech that he did not notice how the timbre of his voice reached its peak and passers-by began to look suspiciously at the violator of the silence. If you believe, your dream will come true. Namikaze smiled and gently ruffled the child's blonde head. Besides, I don't think that you can't do anything and that you don't have any abilities. You definitely have them, you just need to try hard and find them. You know, you really lifted my spirits, Naruto said, throwing a grateful glance at the Hokage. Rarely does anyone pay attention to me, much less listen to me. Thank you. You're welcome. Minato smiled and wanted to add something else, when suddenly a tiny alarm clock in his pocket began to ring, reminding him that classes at the academy were about to start and he needed to hurry if he wanted to send Naruto there today. What? Is it time already? The young Uzumaki watched the Hokage closely as he set the alarm clock, and quickly realized that the clock showed about 15 minutes past 8. It would be bad if they were late. Yeah, well, shall we go? The fourth one extended his hand to the boy and when the child's palm grabbed it, he used his famous instant teleportation technique, and the blondes disappeared from the playground. Attention everyone. We have a new student. Naruto stood in the center of the class, behind him stood his new teacher, Yumi no Iruka, introducing him to the class. Speaking of the class, all the guys had known Naruto for a long time, but judging by their interested faces, they were seeing him for the first time. Not a blue blood, but I ask you to love and favor him. On this note, the teacher finished introducing him and pointed the boy to a free seat in the class next to a blonde girl. As far as Naruto remembered, it was Ino Yamanaka, the eternal rival of his adored Sakura-chan for their beloved Sasuke-kun. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 10. Almost the first day at the Shinobi Academy for Naruto began almost successfully. Old new classmates accepted him warmly and without indignation. Children looked at the new guy with interest and smiled at him kindly. Naruto, who had dreamed of making at least one friend his entire short life, barely held back his joyful cries and the desire to rush through the class like a whirlwind and strangle all the kids smiling at him in sincere embraces. So, where should I seat you? The teacher thoughtfully rubbed his chin, looking around the audience for free seats. Okay, sit next to Ino for now. Iruka pointed to the seat next to the blonde girl, in whom Naruto recognized Sakura-chan's best friend. The prospect of being in Yamanaka's company made the young Uzumaki wince slightly. It wasn't like the boy had any problems with the girl in his home world. Ino treated him well, or maybe she just didn't notice the blonde's existence, but the young flower girl was known for her rather difficult and proud character, which is why Uzumaki didn't know how to communicate with her at all. Whatever. Everyone here behaves differently. Maybe if I can befriend her, Sakura-chan will finally pay attention to me. Having reasoned thus, the former Jinchuriki perked up and confidently headed to the second row, where there was an empty seat right next to the window. Sitting down at the wooden, and therefore slightly rough, desk, Naruto laid out the school supplies collected by Kushina on the table. A pen, a pencil, an eraser, a couple of notebooks and a pencil case. The young blonde especially liked the pencil case. A couple of green, funny smiling frogs were happily splashing in the river and admiring the rainbow flaunting above the pond. The author of this drawing worked hard, and if Naruto did not know what frogs really look like, he would have believed in this image. Since childhood, the boy had a craving for the aforementioned individuals of the diverse animal world, and it is not entirely clear why. The child himself could not explain this fact, but as far as possible he tried to buy everything where he saw his charm, be it an item of clothing or something not very necessary, for example, school notebooks. But this was before meeting the fourth and his wife. Now that Naruto has a normal home, his own room and, most importantly, people who seem to really care about him, the blonde boy is determined to start studying hard and achieve his goal, to become Hokage. But this does not mean that his love for amphibians has faded into the background. Not at all. You may ask, how did Kushina find out about Naruto's passion for amphibians? They only met recently. The answer is very simple. One day, when Naruto was still lying in the hospital bringing freshly baked pies with strawberry jam to the boy's ward, the fourth's wife found the child sitting in a rather uncomfortable position, but enthusiastically drawing these very frogs. That's when the red-haired woman went to the local market, where she bought this pencil case for her son. But let's not go into details and continue talking about frogs. Well, Naruto loves these, green and bulging ones, so let him love them. Everyone has different hobbies and there's no accounting for taste, right? Hey, Naruto. Iruka-sensei's voice sounded like a bolt from the blue right in the blonde's ear. A very irritated Iruka-sensei. What else? The child, still not recovered from a mesmerizing sleep, lazily opened his blue eyes. Iruka-sensei. What are you doing here? Yumino's eye twitched nervously, but the teacher found the strength to restrain his anger and not to hit the negligent student on the head. Gathering all his irritation into a fist, Iruka, with a sadistic grin, deigned to answer the stupid question. It's obvious what I'm doing here. But what are you doing on your first day at the academy? The sensei hoped to slightly intimidate the student. But the tone of his voice sent shivers down everyone's spines, including Yumino himself. At first, Uzumaki looked at his teacher with confusion and a little fear, sincerely trying to catch the thread of the conversation and understand what he had managed to do when, it seemed, he had done nothing. Understanding came slowly, but it did come. The boy blushed deeply from the realization of his mistake and mumbled something similar to, "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Out of the corner of his eye, Uzumaki glanced around the class. All the guys were looking at the new guy with undisguised curiosity and joy, and some weren't even trying to hold back their laughter. Naruto's cheeks turned even more red. Bravo, Naruto, you proved yourself to be a clown on the very first day. The boy reproached himself with annoyance. How shameful. But, on the one hand it's shameful, on the other, you shouldn't have slept on the very first day during the very first lesson. The rest of the school day passed more calmly. The teacher spoke incessantly and pounded the chalk on the board, explaining to the class the basics of the shinobi art. Sometimes he interrupted his fiery speech with furious gesticulations, apparently hoping to convey to the children with his hands what he could not convey with words. On the fifth round of the lecture on throwing shurikens, Naruto began to treacherously feel sleepy, but the boy heroically held on and even tried to suppress yawns. Suddenly, a small noise was heard next to him, and, turning around, Naruto came across a young Yamanaka with his gaze. The girl slightly moved away from the desk and, resting her head on her folded hands, languidly looked at the back of the overwrought sensei. Ino's gaze showed incredible boredom and indifference to everything that was happening. It seemed that a little more, and the girl would simply plunge into the world of Morpheus, but the young lady could not allow herself to do this. She may be popular among her classmates, but sleeping in class would definitely not add prestige to her. Therefore, all that the blonde could allow herself was to sprawl on the desk and stare blankly through the window at the trees swaying in the wind and the birds flying past. Naruto looked at the girl for a minute and thought about something of his own, until a sensitive kick in the leg brought him out of his daydreams. Returning to this sinful earth, Uzumaki felt Yamanaka's gaze on him. Raising an eyebrow questioningly and without changing her comfortable pose, the girl seemed to be asking him, "What are you staring at?" Naruto quickly shook his head, making it clear that he was just thinking and didn't need anything from Ino. The blonde just shrugged and again directed her vague gaze out the window. No matter how hard Naruto tried to wake up and concentrate on the teacher's speech, he did it with difficulty. With great difficulty. And curiosity gradually took over. In his world, Ino had always been a businesslike, proud and attentive girl, but here the pride and businesslike attitude remained, but the attentiveness clearly waved its hand and evaporated somewhere. There was no other way to explain Yamanaka's current behavior. After holding out for a couple of minutes, the blonde gave in and decided to clarify some points for himself. To do this, it was necessary to draw Ino into the conversation and slowly find out the necessary information. Although Naruto doubted that the blonde would answer at least one of his questions, it was worth trying. Is Iruka-sensei always so? The boy thought, searching for a suitable definition. Boring. He finally found one and looked at his classmate with curiosity. Always, but, the blonde examined her nails appraising ly, now he's not boring, just uninteresting. He was boring when he surpassed himself and put even the excellent student Hinata to sleep, not to mention the others. She tore her gaze away from her nails only to transfer it to a small pocket mirror and fix a golden strand of hair that had escaped from under a hairpin. I see. Naruto smiled tensely. It seemed that Ino was not eager to continue the conversation, so the boy chose to remain silent. Why get into trouble? That's right, there's no need. Don't worry so much. The blonde suddenly decided to stop being sad and chat with the new guy. After all, the Hokage himself brought him. Surely the boy is somehow connected to him, and if so, it would be stupid to miss the chance to prove herself to the head of the village, because if she shows herself from the best side, who knows, maybe she will be given some very important mission after becoming a genin, of course after which Sasuke will pay attention to her, and Lobastia's rival will die of envy. Well, I remember we had a case. About 2 weeks ago, probably. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 11. Naruto had been walking around Konoha for an hour, cursing himself for the 100th time for asking Ino to show him the village just in case, you never know. The blonde saw it as a chance to get closer to a possible relative of the Hokage and happily agreed. And now they were walking around Konoha, looking at its main attractions. But to be honest, they were just hanging out at Yamanaka's favorite stores, looking at and buying everything they liked. Or rather, only Ino looked at every little thing and dragged it to the checkout. Naruto valiantly decided to help his classmate take all the purchases home. Well, no one asked his opinion, as he decided. The girl wants it, the guy will do it, and it doesn't matter whether he wants it or not. This was the principle by which the young Yamanaka acted, rightly believing that this is how everything should be. Listen, this is already the 10th boutique you've dragged me into. I think I asked you to show me Konoha, not a chain of brand stores, Naruto tried to protest. If you don't like something, then look around the area yourself. Ino's green eyes flashed with displeasure as she opened the door to another store. This time, all kinds of shinobi weapons. Uzumaki, who had opened his mouth to respond with a barb, froze in shock. He had never seen anything like it. This store was simply full of a variety of weapons, incredibly sharp throwing knives, whose blades shimmered beautifully in the sunlight, heavy spiked maces, trident kunai with a special teleport formula. It seemed that the fourth often came here, twin swords of various ranks, incredibly beautiful katanas, six-pointed shurikens, dangerous hammers and poison daggers. Here was everything that a shinobi could only dream of. Noticing the admiring look of her companion, the blonde smiled slyly. It seemed that Naruto had never been to such establishments and was now pleasantly surprised, which meant that for the near future he would see nothing but shelves with weapons. An excellent reason to stop his pitiful whining about shopping. Once they left here, they could safely go to the next street and buy the boots and blouse that she liked so much, which the girl had her eye on a couple of days ago. Oh, Ino. Hey, Naruto's ringing voice brought the daydreaming Yamanaka back to the sinful earth. What do you want? The blonde responded a little tiredly and irritated, unhappy that someone had so brazenly interrupted her dreams. No, everything is fine, ha ha ha. Naruto laughed fake. Not wanting to test Yamanaka's nervous system, the blonde decided not to tell her that she had been standing like a pillar in the middle of the store for a couple of minutes, disturbing other customers, and in her green eyes, one after another, appeared a soft blue blouse, then scarlet boots. Plus, the girl kept repeating something about how Lobastea will hang herself from anger and envy, and Sasuke-kun will notice true beauty. Yeah, if Yamanaka found out about this, not only Naruto would be in trouble, but also the other witnesses of what happened. The situation was diffused by the elderly owner of the store, who approached the boys to ask if they needed his help. Naruto immediately switched to the old man, firmly deciding to buy some super mega cool weapon. Ino, shaking her head in displeasure, went to the rack with hairpins with a secret. This was the new brainchild of the crazy inventor of Konoha, which looked like an ordinary hairpin, but as soon as one of the legs was slightly turned, the hair ornament instantly turned into a deadly blade, the end of the blade of which was smeared with a fast-acting poison. With such a weapon, it was enough to inflict only a minor scratch on the enemy to send him straight to hell. Or heaven. It depends on your luck. Minato Namikaze walked along the slightly darkened streets of his native village, wondering where his hyperactive son could have gone. Flashback. About 20 minutes ago he returned home from work, where he was met by his worried wife. The reason for her worry was, of course, Naruto. The mischievous boy did not come home after classes at the academy ended. At first, Kushina decided that her son was simply playing with his new acquaintances, so she did not attach any importance to it, but now, when the clock showed 9 in the evening, and there was no sign of the child, the girl was seriously worried. She had already run to the academy several times, asked Iruka and other teachers about Naruto, looked for him in various stores that could only attract the attention of an 8-year-old child. A couple of times she was lucky, and the sellers recognized her son in today's customers, however, he was with some girl. Yamanaka Ino, I think. Having calmed down a little that Naruto was not alone, Kushina continued the search, but they did not give any more results. Then she decided to visit Yamanaka, in the hope that the missing child would be found in the clan circle drinking tea with cookies. Kizu was a close friend of Kushina and a very kind woman. When she gave birth to a daughter, the fourth's wife looked at the screaming bundle with a bit of envy, because she and Minato were afraid to have children of their own, since a new vessel for the fox had not been found. However, the little fidget was not there either. Ino said that she had said goodbye to Naruto a long time ago, and he did not involve her in his future plans. Not knowing where else to look for her son, Namikaze decided to wait for her husband. He was supposed to arrive in 5 to 10 minutes. End flashback. And now the fourth Hokage was wandering through the streets of Konoha, trying to find his careless child. Of course, he could have used the seal he had left on Naruto's shoulder blade, but even the slightest burst of his chakra would have attracted the attention of the Konoha guards and the Hokage's regular bodyguards. He didn't really want to explain to them what was what. And Namikaze had enough enemies even in his own village, and they certainly shouldn't have known that the boy was his own son. For this simple reason, Minato tried to find the child without resorting to the art of shinobi. Naruto ran out of the small shop extremely pleased and happy, clutching something suspiciously similar to a piece of sausage in his fist. Stopping for a minute and not noticing anything unusual, the boy shrugged his shoulders and continued on his way. The evening was coming into its own, the sky was becoming darker, and the sun had long since turned crimson and was now barely visible over the horizon. It would seem that the little child should have been sitting at home and sleeping for a long time, but this was Naruto, and when did Naruto do anything like other children? Having run a couple more meters, the blonde stopped at a bush that had not been trimmed for a long time and began to quickly crumble sausage in his hands, whispering something under his breath that sounded like an animal's call. After a short period of time, the bushes finally began to move, and a dirty, shabby puppy crawled out of them. The little ball of fur was clearly several weeks old, it was too tiny. Naruto smiled happily, watching the dog greedily swallow pieces of liver sausage and lap up milk from a cracked plastic lid. But, as we know, everything comes to an end. And so the little dinner of the homeless dog came to its logical end. The feeling of a full stomach made the dog clearly cheer up and, in gratitude, began to lick the hands of his benefactor, barking awkwardly and comically. Naruto laughed happily at the display of such genuine love. There you are. The fourth breathed out in relief, putting his hand on his son's shoulder, scaring the hell out of the latter. Minato had already forgotten about possible enemies and had already folded the seals of instant teleportation, when he heard an extremely familiar laugh coming from somewhere in the nearby bushes. The source of the sound turned out to be his missing son, enthusiastically playing with. What is that, a puppy? Don't scare me like that again. Naruto muttered reproachfully, after which he changed his anger to mercy. Look what a fluffy miracle I found. Shall we take him? Hope and supplication appeared in the childish blue eyes. Well, Minato hesitated, not knowing what to say. He knew perfectly well that Kushina would be against the appearance of a dog in their house. If it were a cat, then so be it, but a dog. However, he could not refuse Naruto. The boy had already been through a lot in the past, if his dreams were to be shattered into pieces now. Okay, take your miracle. We'll somehow persuade the bloody habanero. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 12. What is this? Bloody habanero asked sternly, looking at her son, who was smiling brightly and holding something alive in his hands, on the threshold of her house. A dog, the fourth spread his hands, smiling innocently. Naruto also made a puzzled face, and the puppy, the cause of all the troubles, barked happily. I see it's not a crocodile, Kushina sighed tiredly, rubbing her forehead with her hand. Why did you let Naruto drag it into the house? The question, of course, was intended for Minato. He only shrugged his shoulders carelessly. What's wrong with that? Our house is big, one hairball won't make the space any smaller. His name is Snowball, Naruto said out of place, soothingly stroking the snow-white lump. I agree, Kushina continued, ignoring her son's remark, but what if this snowball grows into a huge snowdrift in a couple of months, what then? I don't know, the fourth admitted honestly, to which he received a disapproving nod from his wife. Well, we could make him a booth. He'll guard the house. My protective barriers cope with this duty perfectly well, Kushina grumbled, but the notes of discontent still died down. It was a sure sign that a couple more arguments, and the unshakable mistress of the bloody seas would give in. Well, she couldn't argue with Minato for long. She loved him too much. What can you do? Besides, the fourth continued the series of arguments in favor of a dog in the house. Naruto will never be bored. He will always be able to run around, fool around with his new friend. And then, you can't leave a defenseless lump on the street all alone, without food, water, to be torn apart by all sorts of scavengers. No need to embellish things here, Kushina exclaimed discontentedly, at first even beginning to feel sorry for Snezak. No one will make fun of him, not like you are making fun of me now. But this was a serious argument in Kushina's favor. If she decided that her nervous system was being tested for strength, then no one and nothing would convince her otherwise. And then the would-be chatterboxes would have to count only on a miracle. Seeing that his wife's mood had dropped from almost calmed down to one more word and you're dead, Namikaze could think of nothing better than to put on a humble look and, snatching the puppy from his son's tenacious fingers, turn him toward the street. Tears appeared in the boy's eyes, and Kushina, confused by such a quick victory, lost all desire to throw the furball out of the house. You're taking advantage of my kindness, Namikaze, she shouted after her husband, crossing her arms over her chest in an offended manner, after which she turned to Naruto. You'd better come up with a nickname for him better than Snowball. And one more thing. If you run off somewhere for a walk without warning again, I won't vouch for myself, got it? Habanero said the last part of the phrase rather threateningly, demonstratively raising her fist almost to her son's nose. He swallowed nervously and quietly squeaked, confirming his agreement with a convulsive nod. Kushina, apparently satisfied with this answer, headed upstairs, saying along the way, food is on the table. Let's go. She gave permission. Minato commented on his wife's actions with a bit of mischief, handing the ill-fated puppy to his son. What will you name it now? I don't even know. Naruto put the soft lump on the floor. The puppy squealed happily and started playing with his young owner's laces. He's so small. The boy looked with affection at the fluffy miracle, which, standing on 4 paws, reached 30 centimeters from the floor. Kurama, baby. That's what I'll call him. Naruto told his father with a smile on his face, to which Minato grinned, but didn't object. First of all, having fed Kurama and built something like a little house mat for him, the father and son finally had dinner and, terribly tired, wandered off to bed, since work and school had not yet been cancelled. Naruto woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't figure out what or who had made him emerge from his sweet dreams. After several futile attempts to see anything, fatigue took its toll and the boy fell onto the pillow, cherishing the dream of once again plunging into the kingdom of Morpheus. A quiet whining and grinding sound could be heard somewhere nearby. Fatigue screamed at me to try to fall asleep as quickly as possible, while curiosity insisted on finding the source of the sound. What do you think won? The answer is obvious. Having overcome the desire to forget about everything and lie down to watch the rest of his sleep, Naruto got out of bed and looked around. His eyes had already gotten used to the semi-darkness, and now the outlines of the table, chairs, wardrobe and bed were clearly distinguishable. Speaking of the bed, the strange noise was coming from under it. Taking a flashlight from the bedside table, he was too lazy to turn on the light in the room. The blonde boy shone it under the bed and almost screamed. Two glowing blue eyes were looking at him from the darkness. It was night in Konoha, and all the inhabitants of the village hidden in the foliage were sleeping peacefully. The only exception was the Anbu patrols, who monitored Konoha's safety during the dark hours. In the Uchiha clan estate, everything was also calm. But only at first glance. Somewhere not far from the very exit to the village streets, a small figure flickered every now and then, which was huffing quietly. Sasuke Uchiha, and it was him, had recently made it a rule to get out of his warm bed in the middle of the night and, climbing out through the window, quietly and carefully, so that, God forbid, his parents would not notice, to go to train. XO. The boy hissed through his teeth when another shuriken hit the hard wood, flying just over the target. Throwing stars had always been a big problem for Sasuke, and it was unclear why there were no such misses with kunai. To be honest, the young Uchiha should not have been bothered by this fact of his imperfection. Girls from the academy and not only followed him around, sometimes not giving him a chance to breathe a little air. The teachers praised the boy vied with each other. How could it be otherwise? After all, Sasuke was the first among all the students of the Shinobi Academy in terms of academic performance. The boys also always took him into account, although they disliked him because all the representatives of the weaker sex turned their gaze only to Sasuke. And his parents were very proud of their youngest son. So what's the matter? What's driving him to exhaust himself with training in the middle of the night when he's already number one in everything? The answer to this question was very simple. There was one person in the world, to surprise and earn the recognition of whom the young genius of the clan wanted more than anything in the world. Uchiha Itachi, Sasuke's older brother and the best shinobi of the Uchiha clan, despite his rather young age. Itachi was only 16, but he was already the captain of the Special Forces Anbu squad. I will definitely surpass you, brother Itachi, the boy whispered into the darkness, catching his breath a little, finishing throwing stars, and moving on to hand-to-hand combat training. Karamu, having found his owner after wandering around the house for a long time, whined happily and crawled out from under the bed, poking his furry muzzle into the boy's knees. The latter sighed with relief. Well, you scared me, my friend. Can you imagine what would have happened if I had screamed in the fourth and Aunt Kushina had burst into the room? The puppy didn't answer, he just made scared eyes. Yeah, better not to imagine that. Naruto laughed quietly and stroked Kurama's fluffy fur. Hey, you still smell of shampoo. The boy buried his nose in the snow-white fur, inhaling the pleasant scent of strawberries. You can sleep next to the bed, on the rug. I can't take you to my place. If Aunt Kushina finds you under my blanket in the morning, we'll both be in trouble. Naruto spread his hands in an apologetic gesture. Surprisingly, Karamu did not show persistence and obediently lay down on the shaggy rug next to his little master's bed. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 13. He immediately come back and finished his breakfast. Who did I tell? The angry cry of the bloody habanero was probably heard throughout all of Konoha. The residents looked out of their windows in concern, but, realizing who was shouting, immediately calmed down and continued getting ready, some for work, some for school, some for somewhere else. After all, over the past 2 years, such mornings have become commonplace for the Konoha residents. It's just that this time the fourth's wife broke her decibel record, and everyone was surprised. I'm late. Not paying attention to his mother's disgruntled cries, Naruto grabbed a bag of sandwiches with his teeth, jumped out the window and rushed to the academy at full speed. Of course, today was an incredibly important day for him, final exams and the end of the school routine in the form of Iruka-sensei's lectures, which make you sleep better than any lullaby. Hey, Naruto. Kushina still hoped to bring her disobedient son back and seat him at the table, but seeing his red jacket flashing 100 meters from the house, the woman finally resigned herself to defeat. He never listens anyway. Well, that's true. Kurama, wanting to cheer up his mistress, comfortingly poked his wet nose into her hand. The woman mechanically stroked the snow-white fur of her pet and, mentally wishing her son good luck on his exams, turned to the stove, Today she intended to arrange something like a celebration for the end of Naruto Academy, which meant there should be a lot of different sweets on the table, including very tasty, and most importantly healthy, homemade ramen, a special recipe for which Kushina was given by her late mother. Well, finally, I thought you chickened out and decided to skip today's exams. Ino couldn't resist a taunt, noticing a tousled blonde head in the doorway of their classroom. You won't get it, Naruto retorted, pulling back his eyelid and sticking out his tongue. Has sensei announced anything yet? The boy quickly sat down at his desk. After all, he was late and was now trying to get his breathing back to normal, which had been out of order from running so hard. Nope, teacher Iruka hasn't entered the classroom yet. You're lucky. Ino phlegmatically examined her manicure, then perked up and conspiratorially whispered, Hey, did you find out information about the teams from your father? No. Naruto's gaze darkened slightly, and notes of great resentment appeared in his voice. Only the best hypnotists could get him to talk about this topic, and with truth serum, and that's not a fact. The young Yamanaka sighed heavily, once again building all possible scenarios in her head. However, she could not engage in this kind of prediction for long. Iruka-sensei entered the classroom and announced the beginning of the final exam. The class immediately stopped buzzing and pricked up their ears, listening to every word of the teacher. Whatever one may say, this was an important day in the life of every graduate, and no one wanted to repeat a year. I suppose you're wondering what's happened to our heroes over the last 3 years. For that simple reason, I'm going to backtrack a bit. Flashback. Naruto ran home after finishing his classes at the academy, hurriedly ate, changed his clothes and, calling Kurama after him, left the walls of the house as quickly as he had appeared in them. Kushina didn't even have time to complain. You're late. Ino pointed her finger at the boy's chest reproachfully, meeting the blonde at the gates of her clan's estate after a large-scale shopping trip and a couple of days at neighboring desks. The two became close friends and often played together. Just for a minute, Naruto tried to justify himself, making puppy eyes and putting on an innocent smile. You're still late, Yamanaka disagreed, although not so sharply. So, where are we going? I only have 2 hours. My mother, you see, urgently needed to replant all the flowers in our store, and she can't do without my help. Ino rolled her eyes irritably. Yeah, no one wants to work. Especially at such a young age. Especially after classes. I was thinking about going to the river. Kiba said that the water had already warmed up to a normal temperature. Naruto thoughtfully rubbed his chin and turned his gaze to his friend, waiting for her decision. Okay. The blonde didn't keep him waiting. I'll just run for a swimsuit and a towel. The girl's long hair whipped Naruto's cheek, and their owner had already disappeared into the house. 5 minutes later she ran out again, this time ready to go. Later, Naruto would remember this day for a long time with horror and shudder, despite the fact that after the event on the river, much changed in the boy's life. It all started when he and Ino had a bet about who could swim the longest against the current without using chakra. The bet itself was stupid, because the water was still cool, although the kids were only happy to have the opportunity to get away from the summer heat. Having ordered Kurama to sit on the shore and, for safety, having tied him to a tree, Naruto and Ino entered the water. They swam well enough, and therefore did not even think about such a trifle as a warm-up. Having set out to swim against what must be a fairly strong current, the friends tried their best to overtake each other, not paying attention to their rapidly fading strength. At first, everything went quite well. Naruto and Ino were keeping an equal distance from the intended finish line. However, soon the son of the fourth felt a slight tingling in his right thigh, but since the thirst for victory was stronger than common sense, the boy did not pay attention to it. Too bad. After a couple of meters, when Naruto and Ino reached the absolute depth of the river, the slight tingling was replaced by a furious pain, twisting his leg and driving him crazy. Balance was instantly lost, and Naruto, in a silent scream, went under the water with his head, not even having time to take a little air into his lungs. Ino, carried away by the desire to win the argument, did not notice how her friend fell behind, and therefore continued to swim until she heard Kurama's heart-rending bark. The dog seemed to have gone mad. He whined, barked furiously, stood on his hind legs and tried in every way to break free from the leash. Not understanding what was going on, Ino turned around and, not seeing Uzumaki behind her, was seriously scared. The current here was strong, and the depth was 3 or 4 meters, which is unsafe for a 9-year-old child. But the worst thing was the little secret of this river, which, alas, not everyone knew about. Somewhere in the middle of the current there was a fork. One path led further, calmly and without any surprises. The other made a circle and, reaching a small relief cliff, passed through it with bubbling waterfalls. Why waterfalls? It was not as dangerous as a real waterfall, because the height was insignificant, but this water path was best suited for extreme kayaking. There were too many underwater rocks and snags, which, if you got caught, you would definitely not get out unharmed. If Naruto had swallowed water and passed out, there was a good chance that the current had carried him back a few meters, right up to the fork. If so, there might be one less blonde on Earth. Ino understood this perfectly well, so she hurried to the shore. That way she had a better chance of catching up with her floating away friend. Naruto woke up in the central hospital of Konoha. Opening his eyes, he saw Minato, Kushina, Kurama and, apparently, his attending physician hanging over him. Ino, although she asked to be allowed to stay, the Namikaze couple sent her to her parents, because the girl was in severe shock and she could not worry. The doctor, very happy about something, hurried to leave the ward, leaving the little patient alone with his parents. That's when Naruto, afraid that the brainwashing would begin, hurried to apologize and, without realizing what he was saying, called Minato and Kushina, Daddy, and Mommy. The Namikaze couple exchanged glances and nodded to each other. A couple of days later, when Naruto was discharged from the hospital, Minato and Kushina officially adopted Naruto. Of course, they knew that the child was their biological son. They even managed to convince Naruto of this, without confusing the kid with various transitions between worlds. So the boy after the incident on the river was probably the happiest on the planet. Of course, the parents were found, even if they did not admit it right away, but still. Yes, but the brainwashing and long lectures with all their consequences still took place. Naruto was even put under house arrest then, so that he would not dare to risk his life anymore. After the boy officially became the son of the fourth Hokage, the villagers' attitude towards him changed somewhat. Almost everyone smiled politely at him if he ran through the streets. His classmates began to respect him more. The female half of the class split into two fan clubs, the genius of the Uchiha clan, and the son of the fourth. In general, life took on new colors. It's not that anyone had been hostile to him before. No, well, in this world it's just that now there was a little more attention. Naruto sometimes even got angry about this. Especially if people's feelings were feigned. It is unknown how, but the boy easily distinguished falsehood from truth. With Ino, their relationship remained friendly, and they still ran around Konoha together after school. Naruto still liked Haruno Sakura, and he did not lose hope of winning the heart of the girl with pink hair, and she, in turn, did not take her adoring gaze off Sasuke. Ino continued to compete with Lobasta about the Uchiha, but purely out of female mischief and unwillingness to lose. As for Naruto and Sasuke, their friendly relationship did not work out. They were always arguing, always and for any reason. They often fought and simply competed in everything and everyone. In such an environment, 2 more years flew by unnoticed. The students of the academy turned 11 or 12 years old, which meant that they had very little time left to study. The final exams were approaching with the Third Space War, and the future genin spent the last weeks of their school life in diligent and exhausting training. No one wanted to lose face. End flashback. So, let's begin the final exam. Yumino Iruka loudly addressed his students. It consists of 4 stages. 1. Transformation technique. 2. Cloning technique. 3. Throwing kunai and shuriken. 4. Sparring. Each stage is held on a separate day. The results will be known immediately. On the spot, in short. Upon successful completion of all stages, you will be given Konoha protectors, after which teams of 3 genin will be distributed. Anyone who does not pass at least one stage will be left for the second year. I wish you all good luck. The teacher moved away from the microphone, gesturing for the graduates to go to the next room, where the first stage of the exam was to be held. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 14. As you all already know, I believe the final exam will be conducted in 4 stages. 1. Transformation technique. 2. Cloning technique. 3. Throwing kunai and shuriken. 4. Sparring. Upon successful completion of all stages, you will be given protectors with the Konoha symbol and awarded the title of genin. Afterwards, I will announce the list of teams, 3 graduates in each, and a personal mentor for each of them. I wish you all a successful completion, because whoever does not pass at least one stage will be left for the second year. After the teacher's speech, a buzz went through the rows of the class. The graduates shared their impressions, worries and hopes. But all good things must come to an end, and now 2 more teachers-examiners appeared at the threshold of the auditorium, who, together with Yumino Iruka, invited the children to the neighboring class, more spacious and not so stuffy, to take the first stage, namely, transformation technique. First stage for the title of Genin. Of course, the entire crowd of graduates was not allowed into the auditorium. The guys were asked to line up and enter the room one by one. Some were happy about this, while others were upset. Well, be that as it may, the classmates still found a common language among themselves and lined up at the doors in an almost perfectly even row. Naruto, Ino, Sasuke and Sakura found themselves in this live queue next to each other, and therefore they sweetly showered each other with barbs. And exclusively, Sakura, Ino, and Sasuke, Naruto. The guys did not get involved in the girls' squabble, just as the girls did not get involved in the guys' battlefield. When the rest of the graduates had already lost patience and dared to show this quartet, where the crayfish spend the winter, the head of their homeroom teacher and one of the examiners, Iruka-sensei, stuck out into the corridor. The teacher scolded the four for being too noisy and ordered, as punishment, to immediately go to class and show what they have learned. The examiners looked at our heroes and, no, sometimes you could catch a shadow of excitement in their eyes. And this uncertainty was not at all due to the presence of the son, even if officially adopted, of the Hokage at the exam. It's just that Naruto, even in this world, managed to establish himself as the most unpredictable and disobedient ninja of the Hidden Leaf. He stood out, in short. But then again, this is Naruto. It would be strange if he suddenly became quiet and calm. Sasuke, Ino, Naruto, Sakura, in this order the guys lined up. This was done to avoid another squabble. Finally, the examiners gave the signal, and the future genin made the transformation seal. 4 claps were heard in the audience, and before the teachers appeared, Iruka-sensei, Sasuke's disguise, Iruka-sensei, Ino's disguise, Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura's disguise, and the third Hokage, but, for some reason, in a female form. In general, the face and physique were definitely the third, but the long hair, gathered in 2 cute ponytails and the modest makeup present on the face of the Hokage, without a beard, were clearly taken from another image. Naruto. 5 voices merged into an angry scream, 2 of which belonged to Sakura and Ino, and the remaining 3 belonged to the examiners. Sasuke considered that yelling was beneath his dignity, so he limited himself to only a contemptuous, but still slightly shocked look in the direction of the blonde. In response, Naruto only dispelled his new image and laughed uncontrollably. Sakura and Ino couldn't stand it and hit him on the head in unison. From both sides, the ringing laughter died down for a moment, and the owner of that cheerful voice grabbed the golden crown of his head and raised his sorrowful eyes to the sky, or rather, to the ceiling, in which such a worldly insult was read that the girls felt some remorse. Fortunately for our restless hero, this transformation was appreciated. The teachers, although they grumbled at the boy, put a corresponding tick on the passing of the first stage. Stage 2 for the title of Genin. Naruto woke up in a bad mood. Today was the second stage of the final exam, namely the illusory clone technique. The boy hated this technique. He couldn't stand it. Why? It just didn't want to work as it should. The clones either didn't appear at all, or they appeared in such a form that even the first years of the academy, who didn't even know how to control chakra yet, laughed. In general, the son of the fourth had good reasons to want with all his heart not to go to this stage. However, he couldn't escape, because, as Iruka-sensei warned, failing at least one stage automatically crosses a student off the list of academy graduates, sending him back to the second year. Stupid technique, stupid clones, stupid exam. Naruto cursed under his breath and, sighing heavily, began to get ready for the academy. No, Naruto, this is no good. Iruka folded his arms across his chest, looking critically at what should have been clones. Naruto tried very hard to distribute the chakra properly, to create at least one adequate clone. It turned out as usual, 3 clouds of mush, vaguely reminiscent of a blonde in outline and coloring. But, no, sorry kid, but we can't count that. Iruka shook his head sympathetically. Naruto looked at the teacher in disbelief, opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water, and couldn't utter a word. Iruka-sensei, another examiner, Mizuki-sensei, intervened in the conversation. After all, Naruto managed to at least make a semblance of himself with color and outline. I think if he works hard, he will be able to create a normal illusion someday. Besides, there were 3 supposed clones, and that is good. Maybe we can count these. Not finding a suitable noun, Mizuki simply waved his hand in the direction of the clones. What are you talking about, Mizuki-sensei? This technique is one of the basic ones. In a difficult moment it can save a shinobi's life. I can't let Naruto graduate from the academy with such a level of illusory clone technique. Iruka said as if cutting off, waving his hand at the blonde so that he would leave the auditorium and call the next graduate. The emotions on Naruto's face changed with rapid speed: hope, distrust, despair and, finally, pure hatred. Holding back the hurtful tears, the boy looked angrily at his sensei and, proudly turning around, rushed out of the classroom like a bullet. Evening of the same day. Yumino Iruka quickly changed his clothes and ran out into the street. Just now, the fourth urgently needed his presence, but he didn't say why. The Jonin jumped on the roofs of houses and thought over all possible options. Most likely, it was about the son of the head of Konoha. But it wasn't Iruka's fault that the boy couldn't master a basic technique, and according to all the laws of the shinobi world, releasing an unprepared student onto a possible battlefield was considered a serious violation. Even if this student was the son of the village's strongest ninja. Yes, that's exactly what Iruka would say in his defense to the fourth. Having encouraged himself like this, the teacher stepped over the threshold of the Hokage's residence. Minato greeted Yumino with an excited smile. The Jonin's heart immediately lifted. If the fourth showed no signs of anger or displeasure, then everything was fine. Iruka, thank you for coming so quickly. The fourth made a sign with his hand, calling for the shinobi to rise from his knee. We're going to talk about Naruto. Hokage-sama, Yumino, without noticing it, interrupted the Hokage mid-sentence. Naruto really has problems with the cloning technique, and no matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't let him through. No, I actually wanted to talk about something else. The fourth raised his palm, stopping the flow of Iruka's nervous speech. It so happened that Naruto snuck into my office and stole the forbidden scroll of seals. I did not interfere, since I am sure that someone helped Naruto come up with such an idea, but I do not know who exactly yet. Naruto trusts you, so I would like to ask you to get to him before the traitor. Moreover, if he has not mastered the illusionary clone technique, then he is probably now trying to master the Kage Bunshin, and it requires a lot of chakra. Naruto is now in the western part of the forest. Please do not tell him that I sent you. I do not want him to think of himself as a thief or something like that, since he was wanted by order of the Hokage. Let everything look like a pure coincidence. Iruka listened to Minato and gradually broke out in a cold sweat. Everyone knew what happened to those who tried to encroach or encroached on the forbidden scrolls of the Kage level, and Iruka could not wish such a fate on one of his favorite students. Having bowed to the Hokage and leaving the residence, the teacher rushed to look for his negligent student. However, the fourth indicated the location of the latter. All that remained was to find a specific place. Naruto was found in the very depths of the darkened forest. The boy sat down in a small clearing and dove headlong into the world of knowledge, or, to put it simply, he very carefully studied the scroll of forbidden shinobi arts. What was it that the fourth said? Pretend that you don't know anything. Yeah, that would definitely come in handy now. The young blonde jumped in surprise, clutching the scroll to himself as if it were the most valuable treasure on earth. Iruka-sensei. What are you doing here? The innocence of this question was simply off the charts, and Iruka was once again convinced of his student's bright intentions. The boy, as the Hokage had assumed, was simply trying to learn a complex technique. Hooray! The Jonin barely held back a sigh of relief. He couldn't show the boy his relief, he might think something. But he had to continue the one-man show. I'm looking for someone. And what are you doing here? Besides, with this scroll, do you know that the fourth has forbidden studying these techniques? The question sounded casual and even surprisingly ordinary, but Naruto didn't seem to share these thoughts of the teacher. Why, what do you mean, forbade studying? The scroll, the boy's voice was noticeably shaking, and his blue eyes were slowly but surely widening in shock. Well, yes, the scroll must not be touched or any techniques must be learned from it. Oh, he shouldn't have said that. He shouldn't have. But the realization came to Yumino later, and the confused child, clutching the papyrus roll, was standing right in front of him right now. But Mizuki-sensei said that if I learn at least one technique, I will be credited with illusionary clones. There was despair and rapidly fading hope in the boy's voice. So what was Iruka supposed to answer? Mizuki said that, Yumino asked slowly, wanting to switch the student's attention from one problem to another, recalling at the same time the nasty grin of his partner when Naruto, the only student who had not handed in the clones, ran out of the classroom angry and upset. Well, yes, that's what he said and there he goes, I guess. You can ask yourself. Naruto pointed somewhere deep into the forest thicket. I wasn't here and you don't know anything, Iruka whispered, disappearing from sight at the speed of sound and leaving the student, who was completely confused and bewildered, sitting on the grass with the ill-fated scroll in his hands. Naruto, are you here? Mizuki-sensei's disheveled head appeared from behind the bushes, his bandana askew. Did anyone notice? No, everything is fine. I have already learned the Kage Bunshin technique, should I show you? Without waiting for the teacher's answer, Naruto made a simple seal. Immediately there were several claps and 20 more Narutos appeared on the clearing. Well, how is it? Will I pass the exam now? Yes. Just give me the scroll, okay. And you'll definitely pass the exam, I guarantee that. Mizuki finally moved away from what he saw and returned to his true goal, holding out his hands to the scroll of parchment. Stop. No one move. Mizuki was instantly surrounded by two Anbu, twisting his arms and putting handcuffs on them. Mizuki, you are under arrest on suspicion of stealing especially valuable and dangerous scrolls of shinobi techniques. You bastard. You blabbed to your daddy, didn't you? I'll kill you, you bastard. The traitor was breaking free from the ANBU's tenacious hands and was throwing threats at Naruto, who was curled up in a ball. No, Mizuki, the Hokage figured it all out himself, and Naruto and I just helped detain the traitor. Iruka came out of the bushes and took his student by the shoulder. Let's go, kid, we need to check off the box about you passing the second stage. As it turned out later, Mizuki always hated his position and dreamed of climbing to the top, in order to, as funny as it may sound, rule the world. For many years, he cherished the dream of getting all 4 secret scrolls and, it must be said, he managed to bring part of his plan to life. The scrolls of the first and second Hokage were stolen for him by one of the Sand spies. After the capture of the stranger, a serious scandal broke out between the Sand and the Leaf, which, thank Kami, was peacefully settled. However, the scrolls, because of which the storm broke out, were never found. Later they were declared missing, and a little later they were forgotten. But this was during the reign of the third. Hiruzen trusted his shinobi and did not consider it necessary to check their loyalty to Konoha, so it was almost easy to steal the scroll without suspecting himself. The fourth one had a policy of trust but verify, so Mizuki had to lay low and pretend to be an ordinary teacher, devoted to his work and country. But finally the case of the disappearance of valuable scrolls was solved and closed, and the criminal was forced to move to prison, and, apparently, for a long time. Naruto was lucky, and Kage Bunshin was recognized as a worthy replacement for simple illusions, so now he could breathe a sigh of relief and go home to sleep and gain strength, moral and physical, for the next stage. Stage 3 for the title of Genin. Let me through. I'm late. A real hurricane was rushing through the morning streets of Konoha, but not a natural disaster, but just the son of the fourth Hokage, who crashed into passersby standing in his way and knocked someone down every minute. Dissatisfied shouts and comments were heard following the restless boy, but the young blonde did not bother to pay attention to this and calmly continued his way towards the academy. Well, how calmly, he rushed through the streets, sweeping away everyone and everything in his path. Okay, everyone line up. I'm only saying this once, so listen carefully. First we take 3 kunai and throw them, then 5 shurikens, and finally we do a mix, 3 kunai and 4 shurikens. Got it, let's begin. First up is Inuzuka Kiba. Iruka waved his hand, declaring the third stage open. A boy with brown hair, maroon triangle stripes on his cheeks and a white puppy on his head walked out onto the court. 2 out of 3 kunai, 3 out of 5 shuriken and finally 2 out of 3 kunai and 4 out of 4 shuriken. Pleased with himself, Kiba left the court and stepped aside to await his sensei's verdict. Next is Uchiha Sasuke. The young Uchiha walked out onto the training ground and tried to calm his racing heart. Everything would be fine, right? He trained day and night for this. Everything had to go smoothly. Sasuke took the weapon and concentrated. 3 out of 3 kunai, 5 out of 5 shuriken, and finally 3 out of 3 kunai and 4 out of 4 shuriken. This was victory. Sasuke, jubilant inside and completely unperturbed on the outside, left the area and went to his teacher. Next is Namikaze Naruto. There was a line, and no one even thought of going out onto the platform. True. Whispers began among the students. Naruto. Yumino had the urge to catch the careless student and give him a good beating. What is he even thinking about? He has final exams. Stop. I'm here. Here I am. The fourth son, disheveled and all wet with sweat, ran out onto the training ground. Without waiting for reproaches from Iruka-sensei, the boy went straight to the site. Fortunately, the sequence of throwing was shouted to him by Kushina when he chewing a sandwich on the go and pulling up his pants, jumped out of the house. The blonde stood in the right position and got ready. 2 out of 3 kunai, 5 out of 5 shurikens and, finally, 3 out of 3 kunai and 2 out of 4 shurikens. This was a great result for Naruto. The satisfied fidget sent a joyful look to the teacher and Ino with Sakura and went to Sasuke with Kiba. Next on the list were Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura. The girls showed a brilliant result, missing only 3 throwing objects. Stage 4 for the title of Genin. Naruto was looking forward to sparring the most, dreaming of punching his opponent in the face. Uchiha Sasuke. So when the day of the final graduation exam finally arrived, Naruto left the house with the most optimistic mood and super mega confident look. To the great chagrin of the young blonde, he was given not Sasuke as his opponent, but Inuzuka Kiba, with whom Naruto did not have the warmest relations. When the sparring began, the boys forgot all the rules of combat and fought in a real way. Everything was used, from specially and sharpened kunai to nails and teeth. And the reason for the fight was little Akamaru, Inuzuka's favorite puppy, as well as his faithful companion, whose size Naruto unsuccessfully joked about, saying that the neighbor's cat would be bigger than this, cur. Kiba, as a loving owner, could not forgive such impudence and swore to make Namikaze take his words back. As soon as his opponent became known, the brown-haired man grinned sadistically and rubbed his fists in anticipation. It must be said that Naruto, although he admitted to himself that he had gone too far with the cur, was not going to retreat or try to apologize. On the contrary, he wanted to win and, since he would not be able to gain the upper hand over Uchiha, it was vital for him to defeat Kiba. Unfortunately, the opponents' forces were almost equal, so the battle continued with alternating success, sometimes for Naruto, sometimes for Kiba. Iruka, when the sparring clearly ceased to be sparring and turned into a debriefing, wanted to intervene, but the other examiners monitoring the progress of the fight stopped this idea, saying that the boys were not violating anything particularly important, and in general, all is fair in love and war. In the end, the sparring, if you could call it that, ended in a draw. The boys were tired and covered in grass and dirt, their clothes were soaked in sweat that they were wrung out, the fighters had bruises and cuts or maybe they were scratches on their faces, but most importantly, you could tell one thing from their eyes, all the feuds were forgotten and they were almost friends now. The traditional friendly handshake at the end of the fight confirmed this fact. Now that the Genin exam was officially over, it was time to announce the new shinobi and give them their forehead protectors. Of Naruto's class, 9 students had become full-fledged ninja: Hyuga Hinata, Yamanaka Ino, Haruno Sakura, Inuzuka Kiba, Aburame Shino, Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji, Uchiha Sasuke, and of course, Namikaze Naruto. The rest of the students had some kind of interview or something like that. So, the exciting moment has come when I will announce the team roster. You have all been waiting for this moment and trained hard to become real ninja and leave the walls of your native academy. I will miss you all very much, but I wish you only victories and success. Take care of your lives and do not get into trouble. The latter especially applies to Naruto. Iruka made a moralizing pause, after which he continued, now I will announce your teams and mentors. Naruto blushed slightly when Sensei pointed out his ability to get into trouble, but quickly forgot about it and, putting on a smart expression, began to fantasize about his future team. First there should be Sakura or Ino. Team 6. Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji. With a fat man, Ino couldn't help but let out a desperate scream, but Shikamaru, who was sitting next to her, distracted Choji in time, so bloodshed was avoided. And Nara Shikamaru. Mentor, Sarutobi Asuma. Ino sat down in her seat, dejected and clearly dissatisfied. Naruto watched her with a sympathetic gaze. Everyone knew about Yamanaka's straightforwardness, but everyone also knew about Akamichi's short temper when it came to extra pounds. And then, Team 7. Anyone other than Sasuke. Namikaze Naruto, Haruno Sakura. Yes, Naruto jumped up from his seat, happily looking at Sakura, who, apparently, was not happy with the idea of being on a team with a blonde who was flickering everywhere. And Uchiha Sasuke. Mentor, Hatake Kakashi. Yes, this time Haruno jumped up from her seat, looking at Uchiha with loving eyes. Why is this? I asked for it without Sasuke. He always ruins everything. Naruto howled to himself, looking at the Uchiha with a hateful gaze, who had only one thought spinning in his head. And why did this pink-haired girl stick around on the same team as me? Naruto is okay, but Sakura. Team 8. Hyuga Hinata, Inuzuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Mentor. Yuhi Kuranai. On that note, the distribution ended, and Aruka, once again wishing his graduates good luck, left the office, leaving the genin to wait for their new senseis. Please leave your feedback. Chapter 15. Kushina sat by the window and, as much as possible, enjoyed the light cool breeze, which in such heat was almost the only salvation. It was about 37 degrees Celsius outside, and the sun, apparently, considered it its duty to melt all the asphalt roads and bring the residents of Konoha, if not to fainting, then certainly to complete exhaustion. The most terrible thing in this abnormal heat for the hidden leaf was not even the scorching sun, but the overvoltage of the network, because of which the air conditioners and fans, working in all the houses without exception around the clock, sometimes failed. It was then that the residents of the village felt the full charm of the hot sun, because of which they wanted to move to live at the bottom of the river. Or better yet, the sea. It was probably cooler there than in all the shady corners put together. When will this end? The fourth's wife stretched out on the window, letting her arms hang over the sill, and a barely noticeable breeze slightly ruffle her scarlet hair. Speaking of which, any girl will agree that long hair is very beautiful. But in such weather, yes, all thoughts of beauty and femininity give way to the desire to pick up the scissors and rid yourself of the extra collector of heat and sweat with one click. Kushina's hands were also itching to play with the scissors, but the love for her own threads of fate, as the girl christened her hair after one incident that brought her together with Minato, outweighed the burning desire to make herself a comfortable haircut. Having suffered over the most difficult task, what to do with my hair so as not to cut it, but so that it would not be hot, Namikaze came to the simplest solution. She tied her hair in a high, reliable ponytail. The cleaning and cooking were finally over, and the woman could afford to relax. Kushina threw all the windows wide open and went out into the yard, where some desert flowers were in full bloom. Once, while walking past the Yamanaka store, the fourth's wife noticed some pretty flowers, which, after a long lecture from her school friend about their unpretentiousness, she immediately bought. Now she was the one who was definitely happy about the approaching gas chamber. Having figured out how much time she had before her son returned from the academy, Namikaze decided to lie down for half an hour in a hammock among her beloved daffodils, peonies, roses, lilies and other flowers, the names of which she no longer remembered. After all, did she have the right to rest or not? Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura sat in the stuffy classroom and couldn't believe their sensei's carelessness. Hitaki Kakashi, the jonin who was supposed to be their mentor before they received the rank of chunin, was brazenly late. And it would be fine if he was late for 10 minutes. Well, 20. But 3 hours. The anger of the newly minted genin knew no bounds. I've had enough. He has no sense of conscience at all. I'm going home. The young Uchiha was always famous for his iron self-control, but here, it seemed, even his nerves gave out. Sasuke-kun. Haruno watched the object of her adoration with an astonished look. Wait, maybe our sensei just forgot about the meeting, the girl timidly suggested, trying to make herself believe what was said rather than her evil, like a dozen Satan's partners. What kind of sclerosis do you have to have? Naruto couldn't help but quip, also getting up from his usual place, trying to peel the soaking wet t-shirt off his equally wet self. But the t-shirt didn't want to give in and firmly stuck to the young body. Sakura, Sasuke interrupted Haruno, who wanted to say something. I never thought I'd say this, but Naruto is right. If our so-called teacher doesn't want to have anything to do with us, wouldn't it be easier to just go home? At least there's air conditioning there. The brunette wiped the annoying beads of sweat from his forehead in irritation. Yes, I guess, the girl responded without enthusiasm. She understood perfectly well that the guys were right and there was no point in sitting in this steam room any longer, but what if the irresponsible teacher still came to meet his team? This question did not want to leave Sakura's head, leaving her completely confused. In the end, the girl locked all doubts deep in her heart and hurried after her partners, who had already managed to leave the classroom and were now confidently heading towards the exit. Where did you dig up this kaka? Kaka, my sensei, in general. Naruto slammed his fist on the table indignantly, drilling his father with a blatantly indignant look. What's wrong? Minato asked in surprise, putting a miracle dish with the simple name, cold soup, into his mouth, which fully justified it. Kushina had gotten this wonderful recipe somewhere, but the Hokage didn't remember where. Although, no, he remembered. It seemed that back then he and his wife went to Suna, where his chatty wife had made a bunch of friends. Yes, that's when one of them shared this heat-removing dish. Minato, you should keep a better eye on your students, Kushina interrupted the conversation without letting her son say a word. Kakashi has completely lost his conscience. He made his team wait for him in this stuffy classroom for 3 hours. Minato. 3 hours. 3. And he didn't even deign to show himself. Is that normal? In anger, the usually calm and peace-loving wife of the Hokage posed a real threat to both mere mortals and her beloved husband, so the latter hastened to defuse the situation. What are you talking about? Kakashi is a very capable and responsible Jonin. He couldn't just ignore his 3 charges. Something must have happened that forced him to postpone meeting his students for later. With each subsequent word, it was becoming increasingly difficult for the fourth to maintain a professionally imperturbable expression. His wife was looking at him too expressively. Okay, you've convinced me. But if your student doesn't find a worthy excuse or doesn't show up tomorrow, I'll personally deal with him, Namikaze promised, clutching the rolling pin ambiguously in her hands. I'll have to catch Kakashi tomorrow morning and find out everything, warn him about everything. Or just shove him into the right audience, Minato mentally noted, looking at Kushina with complete agreement in his eyes. My sensei was your student, Dad? Naruto asked, looking at his father in disbelief. Does that mean you didn't come to the first meeting either? I heard somewhere that students take an example from their sensei. No, idiot. Naruto's last phrase was said with such an innocent intonation that the fourth even felt a vein pop out on his forehead. I've never been late for anything. Especially for the first meeting with my own students. Why are you so angry right away? I was just wondering. Naruto feigned offense, folding his arms across his chest. If he wasn't late, then he wasn't late. Naruto, stop making fun of your father. Come on, eat, it will do more good. Kushina lightly slapped the ladle on her son's blonde head, and, yes, Minato was really never late anywhere. Thank you, Minato answered laconically, putting another spoonful of koldnik into his mouth. His wife only smiled sweetly and reached for the window, closing it to prevent a swarm of mosquitoes from appearing in the house. Hello everyone, my name is Hitaki Kakashi and I will be your sensei until you pass the Chunin exam. Why didn't you show up yesterday? Naruto and Sakura showed amazing synchronicity both in their words and in their accusatory gesture towards their teacher. Sasuke chose to remain silent, because he poured out all his accumulated anger yesterday on his older brother, who refused to train him. In general, at the moment, the Uchiha was absolutely calm and confidently kept his face like a brick, despite a slight feeling of irritation towards his frivolous sensei. Yes, I know. Yesterday the cat didn't let me get through to you. And you know the sign about subsequent misfortunes. I didn't want to fall under their influence at all. Kakashi understood perfectly well that such an excuse would recommend him among the young genin as a schizophrenic, but, as luck would have it, nothing more plausible came to mind. After all, he couldn't tell his charges that Obito had gotten on his nerves so much with his whining that Kakashi agreed to go shopping with him in search of a suitable birthday present for Rin, the girl who used to be their Iryoran teammate. Okay, guys, why don't we go out to the roof and get to know each other properly? Please leave your feedback. Chapter 16. So, you already know my name. I'm not going to tell you what I like and what I don't. But I can say that I have a couple of hobbies. Hitaki leaned comfortably against the wall in the shadow of the roof, folding his arms across his chest, and looked expectantly at the 3 genin, who now lay on his shoulders with great responsibility. And why did Minato-sensei so urgently need to make him a teacher for 3 young brats? Kakashi was fine with the role of captain of the Anbu Special Forces. However, it was not customary to argue with a teacher, who was also the Hokage, so the white-haired Jonin had no choice but to grit his teeth and agree. To tell the truth, he was even glad when his restless former teammate Uchiha Obito begged him to help him choose a gift for Rin. Kakashi then did not even come to the meeting with the genin on purpose. He hoped that the fourth would understand that he, Kakashi, was no sensei and would replace him with someone. But all his hopes were dashed against the impregnable fortress with the proud name of the Namikaze couple. The thing is that Hitaki was so carried away by dreams of continuing to work as part of Anbu that he completely forgot about the fighting spirit of the fourth's wife and her indisputable proof of her own rightness, the aluminum frying pan. And sensei, when he wanted, could be very convincing. Hitaki still had goosebumps running down his spine as he recalled the events of last night. Flashback. Somewhere around the middle of the 3rd morning, there was a knock on the copy ninja's window. Surprised by such an early visit, Hitaki cautiously pulled back the curtains and jumped up slightly on his bed. The night, or rather morning, guest was none other than Namikaze Minato. Namikaze Minato, who was very unhappy about something. Very unhappy. Kakashi. The former teacher's face twisted into an evil grin. Don't you want to explain to me what was so important you were doing yesterday that you didn't have the strength to come to the meeting with your own team? Huh. For some reason, at that moment, Hitaki felt like a 12-year-old teenager again, caught by his teacher reading the Come Come Paradise series. Yeah, what happened then? Sensei, I'll tell you everything. The white-haired Jonin raised his hands in a conciliatory gesture. The thing is that And he told the fourth everything that was going on in his soul at that moment. How he had gotten used to the role of a cleaner during his time in Anbu, how he had stopped being bothered by unpleasant nicknames like Kakashi the Merciless because of the cruel Sharingan techniques in his left eye. But this Sharingan had its own history, which only Minato's team had the chance to know. He told how he had come to like his job and how he did not want to take responsibility for inexperienced little shinobi, who still have their whole lives ahead of them. Minato listened to his student and seemed to understand all his feelings. At one time, he also worried about all the murders committed, even though they were enemy shinobi, skillfully hiding his confusion behind a mask of calm and composure. He also worried to the point of trembling about his young students. It was later that the blonde learned to look at the world as it is and not worry in vain. I understand how you feel, but I truly believe that becoming a mentor is the best choice for you at the moment. Honestly, you're starting to worry me a little when you act like a ruthless killing machine during missions. Kakashi, I'm serious, you need to take a break. Here Namikaze's voice lost its understanding notes, replacing them with a slightly intimidating one. I hope you realize that you really pissed off my dear wife with your prank yesterday. She's clearly determined to get revenge on you for bullying Naruto, forcing him and the rest of Team 7 to roast, in this office where not even a breath of fresh air can penetrate. What? Hitaki's body was instantly covered in so-called goosebumps, and the man himself could only open and close his mouth like a fish thrown ashore. Shocked by what he heard, Kakashi listed a dozen possible tortures awaiting him, and Minato added a couple hundred more in a casual tone and said that he was not trying too hard yet, and his wife had a much better developed imagination. In short, I wish you good luck with all my heart, because you are my most capable student. I don't want to lose you. On this melodic note, Namikaze formed a seal to dispel the shadow clone, and, yes, you better not be late. For your own good, the clone winked mischievously at Kakashi and dissipated in a cloud of smoke. End flashback. Hey, sensei. The indignant voice of one of the students brought the newly minted teacher Kakashi out of his memories. You are not listening to us at all. Opening his eye, Hitaki saw the displeased face of the fourth son. The boy looked at his mentor with obvious displeasure, and it was quite clear that the prospect of spending several years in the company of the white-haired man did not appeal to him. Actually, I'm listening. Hitaki tried to save his already ruined reputation. I heard everything you said perfectly well. Oh really? Sakura asked incredulously, and what did we say? That I don't listen to you, Kakashi answered happily with the most innocent look. And before that, Sasuke couldn't resist asking. I didn't hear, the copy ninja admitted honestly, unable to recall any echoes of his charge's chatter. See, you didn't listen to us. I told you so. Naruto's indignation knew no bounds. The boy crossed his arms over his chest and, turning away from the teacher, assumed a pose of, you have greatly disappointed me, sir. Minato Namikaze sat in the office of the head of Konoha and mentally cursed the one who invented all these written reports, which, upon completion of this or that mission, simply could not exist without the Hokage's signature. And don't get me wrong, the fourth was always responsible for his work, it's just that in this heat he didn't want to do anything except lie around in a hammock somewhere and eat ice cream. But the work wouldn't be done by itself. Minato understood this perfectly well, so he had no time for banal whining and dissatisfaction with the accumulated reports if he wanted to go home early. Gritting his teeth, the fourth armed himself with a seal and began to stamp the documents, only running his eyes over the first lines in order to have at least some idea of the missions completed. Fortunately, almost all the reports belonged to genin teams, and their missions did not require detailed study. Then there was a knock on the office door, and Team 7 in full force appeared on the threshold. Hokage-sama, we need a mission. All that was visible on Kakashi's face took on a very guilty expression. However, it was understandable. According to the rules, a new team of genin does not go on missions for about a month, spending this time in hard training. Naruto has finally gotten to him, flashed through the fourth's mind, because he knew very well what a nuisance his son could be when he really wanted something. However, agreeing right away would mean losing respect as Hokage. Minato folded his hands into a boat and looked at his student with a surprised and questioning expression. What do you mean? The rules are the same for everyone. Yes, I know, but, Kakashi began, but was abruptly interrupted by a very restless boy in an orange t-shirt and shorts of the same color. We already know everything we need. You yourself said that genin missions are not difficult and do not require any supernatural techniques, so why can't we get a mission? The offended look of blue eyes and cheeks slightly puffed out with indignation could move anyone, but not Minato. The young Hokage knew all these tricks very well. After all, he himself actively used them for his own purposes in childhood, and did not want to give in. First of all, don't interrupt your teacher, it's not polite. Secondly, don't yell at me, I'm not only Hokage, but also your father. And thirdly, no matter how well you were trained at the academy, you still know almost nothing, which means that even on the most harmless mission you can easily hurt yourself or your comrades. Have I answered all your questions? It was funny to watch his son's face stretch. Naruto was not used to such educational talks from his father. Usually the explosive Kushina lectured in their family, and contradicting her was fraught with unpleasant consequences. Minato usually got by with a disapproving look and light remarks. Ahem, sensei, maybe you really should give us some kind of mission. Let the guys have fun, maybe they'll understand later why all these month-long training sessions are necessary. Kakashi conspiratorially looked into the eyes of the fourth and, unnoticed by his team, blinked. Minato responded with the same unnoticeable wink, pulling out some rather tattered piece of paper from the nearest nightstand. Only at your request, Kakashi, the fourth handed the student a piece of paper. I have one interesting mission. I think the guys will remember it for a long time. You're a sadist, sensei. That was the message that could be read in Hitaki's gaze after he was introduced to the mission to capture the infamous Tora-chan, the beloved cat of the Fire Daimyo's wife. Chapter 17. Hokage-sama, could you please give us a more worthy mission? The question was completely saturated with mockery, but Naruto honestly tried to keep a serious expression on his face and some semblance of respect. No, he loved and respected his father very much, but at moments like these, the boy simply itched to somehow irritate the aforementioned. Minato looked at Team 7 with a tired and slightly empty gaze. The three disgruntled but unaffected genin stood in front of the fourth master's desk, looking sideways at each other as if conferring about something. However, this something was no mystery to the Hokage. It was clearly about the upcoming mission. There was simply no other reason for such a well-coordinated exchange of thoughts. Yeah, and 3 months ago his restless son didn't even dare to mention a more worthy mission rank for such a cool shinobi. What a wonderful time it was then. And all thanks to Tora-chan with her claws and teeth. A cute kitty with a funny ribbon bow on her neck managed to get not only the latter, but also all the inhabitants of the Hidden Leaf in a couple of hours of running around Konoha from her pursuers. The first hours the inhabitants had the honor of enjoying the loud meow, but a little later the son of the fourth joined the kitty's solo. Konoha will hardly ever forget this duet. And what? The skillful combination of Naruto's wild scream with Tora-chan's indignant cries as, not, Hiri Marie, but very much, Ogogo, as one young pink-haired lady put it, bandaging her rather battered teammate. Tora-chan did not spare her precious claws and heartily caressed her pursuer with them. Minato chuckled to himself, remembering how something bandaged from head to toe, introducing itself as his son, had burst into his house. Kushina had almost killed her husband when she saw the state in which their boy had returned from a mission. Naruto then whined for about 2 weeks that all his scratches were starting to heal and were therefore itching like crazy. I remember that even Kurama couldn't stand it and started licking all his master's battle wounds with his rough tongue, to which the master only fought back and squealed even louder. True, this time from tickling. But that doesn't change the essence. Asin with Naruto. Sasuke was indignant, drilling Sakura with a displeased look. How much longer can you spend weeding the beds and walking the dogs? Well, it looks like the Kunoichi decided to reach out to the remnants of common sense in her partners, but they don't want to listen to her and are eager to fight. If even the imperturbable Uchiha admitted this. The fourth one looked at the seventh team with an appraising glance and, having decided something for himself, took a small scroll out of the nightstand. I think you've gained enough experience, so today I'm giving you a more difficult task. Minato snapped his fingers, and a middle-aged man holding a small string bag entered the Hokage's office. This is a relatively easy escort task. Mr. Tazuma is an engineer, and he urgently needs to get to the City of Rain, where he must build a new bridge. However, some individuals do not benefit from building a bridge, so they will try to do everything to prevent Tazuma-san from entering their hometown. Your task is to escort him to the City of Rain and ensure that the bridge is built without external interference. Yes, sir, Hokage-sama. Naruto saluted, beaming with joy, and shouted something like, leaving in a minute, heading for the exit. The man winced slightly, already mentally assessing the capabilities of his escorts. However, there was still hope for their mentor. Even if he looked, well, a little strange. A little. Excellent. Finally, we were entrusted with at least some interesting task. Let's do it flawlessly. It is not clear why, but it seems that Naruto sincerely believed that with such a battle cry, he would show his employer all his coolness in the latter, realizing what magnificent shinobi would protect him, would admire their skill all the way. Does this kid even know how to do anything other than talk nonstop? Tazuna whispered to Kakashi, fearing more shouts from the young blonde. He is more capable than you might think. Sometimes he acts like a clown, but he does it purely because he dislikes everything serious and boring. He, so to speak, tries to entertain everyone around him, and it doesn't matter to him at all when to do it. Kakashi once again immersed himself in the world of Sannin Jiraiya, come paradise. Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto completely by chance simultaneously turned their gaze to the teacher and exchanged glances. The newly minted genin could not understand their sensei, namely his slightly abnormal habit of reading, that porn, as Naruto dubbed the unfortunate book, in absolutely any position. Hatake could do his favorite thing hanging upside down, on running, dodging attacks from his students, just walking and it didn't matter what was under his feet. Earth, water or a tree trunk and, what can we say about the above, when he calmly took out a book during a report to the Hokage or when the team received a new assignment. Naruto and his comrades, watching the teacher, could not understand how their sensei, with such enthusiasm, did not finish reading one single book. According to Naruto's calculations, Hatake should have already read the 120th volume of this series, and he was still hanging on one single one and could not overcome it. It was strange. Where are you going, Mr. Tazuma? Two enemy missing nin appeared out of nowhere in front of Tazuma and his companions. You won't pass. The first one, go. The shinobi quickly formed some seals and, taking out two scythes connected by a thick chain from somewhere in their sleeves, rushed at Kakashi. In an instant, one half of the copy ninjas body flies in one direction, and the other in the other. To say that the genin were shocked would be an understatement. But like any other ninja, these three were taught to carry out missions first and foremost, and although Kakashi said that a comrade's life was more important than any service record, he still admitted that it was impossible to work if a partner died. Still unable to suppress their emotions, the young shinobi surrounded Tazuma-san, intending to repel any enemy attacks, not so much to show him what they were capable of, but to avenge Kakashi. Even though he was weird, he was still their teacher. One of the enemies suddenly appeared right in front of Sakura. It seemed that he intended to tear the kunoichi apart, as he did with Hatake. However, when Sakura was already preparing to block the fatal blow, Sasuke appeared right in front of her. The Uchiha hit the troublemaker in the face with all the force he could muster, thereby using the enemy's speed against him. The latter flew back a few meters, where Naruto was already waiting for him. The blonde pulled out a couple of kunai and several shuriken from his holster, managing to tie some of them together while Sasuke blocked the attack. Leaping into the air and creating a couple of shadow clones, the boy threw the weapon at the enemy, which, thanks to the stars, went on a second run, inflicting additional damage on the enemy. It seemed that everything was going relatively well, because the three genin managed to knock out one of the enemies, and now they were carefully tying him up with a rope that appeared out of nowhere. But, as always happens in such situations, the second shinobi appeared too suddenly. Apparently, he knew how to hide his chakra perfectly. Having caused a stir among the children, he tried to cut the rope tying up his unconscious comrade, but he was stopped by Sasuke, who came to his senses in time, who, without losing his composure, used his clan's signature technique, Kaden. Giant Fireball. This technique was taught to the young Uchiha by his older brother, which is why Sasuke was incredibly proud of it. Having dodged the fire technique, the renegade tried to attack again, but was pinned to the ground by Kakashi. As it turned out later, Hatake was not killed at all. He had used the substitution technique earlier, before the enemy appeared, and was watching his students from afar. The reason for his action was a small puddle, into which the hidden rain renegades had turned for the sake of camouflage. And since there had been no rain in this area for about a month, the former Anbu captain had no trouble recognizing the hiding enemies and their plan. Having praised the students for their quick reaction and coordinated actions, Hatake suggested that they continue on their way. You're so brave, Sasuke-kun. Sakura had been hanging on the Uchiha for hours now, praising him left and right, thanking him for saving her from the renegades. The brunette no longer had the strength to fight off the persistent girl, so he heroically endured this torture, not saying a word, just clenching his teeth tighter. As always, all the laurels go to Sasuke. Naruto looked at the latter with displeasure, but seeing a plea for mercy in his opponent's eyes, he changed his anger to mercy and laughed. Here they entered the city, and Naruto's attention was drawn to the old low houses, wooden benches and people wandering along the street, mostly in rags. Walking deeper into the street, after almost 5 steps you could see men sitting by the wall, holding signs with the inscription, "I will do any job." It seems like this city is very poor, Sakura muttered in confusion, giving a few coins along with some candy to a child who was begging for alms. That's right, responded their employer, sadly examining the almost empty shelves of the tiny stall. The only way for the inhabitants of this city to survive is to conclude a contract with the country of rice fields. But for this we need a bridge over which the exchange of goods will take place. That's why you were in such a hurry to set out. This city is starving. Naruto watched the running child with a sympathetic look. Naruto, of all people, understood what it was like when no one needed you and sometimes you had nothing to eat. Fortunately, his whole hard life was in the past, now he had loving parents and loyal friends. It's true. Follow me, I'll take you to a place where you can spend the night. Tazuma waved his hand, calling the shinobi to follow him. And I say, heroes don't exist. And I say, they exist. Naruto and Inari, the grandson of Lord Tazuma, had been arguing for a good half hour and were even hoarse from constant yelling. And the reason for their quarrel was incredibly simple. Inari said that there are no heroes in the world and only an idiot would want to become one. Naruto was deeply hurt by such disdain, and he began to prove the boy otherwise. Now two of a kind, Sakura folded her arms across her chest, watching the squabble. You don't say it, like little children. Well, I mean, Inari is a child, but Naruto. Sasuke supported the girl, which made her blush. Of course, Sasuke himself supported her. I'll prove to you that heroes exist. If you don't believe it, it doesn't mean they don't exist. Naruto shouted at the top of his lungs, clearly not caring about basic rules of decency. And then something happened that the fourth son clearly didn't expect. Inari, bursting into tears, ran out of the room, running upstairs somewhere. Naruto. Cretin. Sakura's heavy fist met her partner's cheek, causing the latter to crash into the neighboring wall, wiping his hair across the floor. I'm so sorry. This idiot always does something wrong. The girl apologized to the mother and grandfather of the runaway boy, unscrewing Namikaze's ear at the same time. Oi yay. Sakura-chan, it hurts. Oi. Naruto howled, looking pleadingly at his friend in the hope of freeing his ear, red as a boiled lobster. Nothing, the woman who was Inari's mother said quietly, he's always like this lately. His father was killed a year ago when he tried to stand up to a group of bandits who had taken over the city. A few months ago, when there was nothing of value left in the city, the robbers left it. But that won't bring Inari's father back. He was given the title of hero and buried like a hero. Maybe that's why Inari hates everything connected with heroes so much. If his father hadn't acted like a hero, he would be alive now. I think that's what Inari thinks. So that's it. Well, it's late, let's go to bed. Kakashi intervened in the conversation. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, we'll take turns on duty. Hi, the boys responded in chorus. After some time, the small house plunged into darkness, sending its inhabitants to the kingdom of Morpheus. Only one small figure came out on the roof, guarding the peace. Please leave your reviews. Chapter 18. Congratulations. Your first difficult mission has been completed with dignity. The client is not dissatisfied, your salary has been paid. The fourth folded his hands in a lock, and, resting his head on them, watched the seventh team of genin. They just stood at attention in front of the Hokage's table, and only the incredible joy in their eyes betrayed their feelings. Of course, they were happy. For the first time in their lives, they had to fight someone for real and they won. Not without injuries, of course, but they won. You're free, guys. Enjoy your well-deserved rest. Minato winked cheerfully at the genin, after which he turned his blue eyes to his now former student, Kakashi, stay a couple of minutes. As soon as the door slammed behind the trio and the sensitive hearing of the two experienced shinobi stopped picking up footsteps, the Hokage turned around in his chair and, glancing briefly at Kakashi, stared out the window. It seems you were right, sensei. The Rain Renegades will do anything to achieve their goal. The creation of an independent village of renegades, or, to put it more simply, the village of assassins. The fourth frowned slightly and bit his lip, Moreover, this village will include absolutely all traders from all 5 great countries and, possibly, from smaller ones as well. There are plenty of renegades everywhere. That is why they need to be caught and eliminated as soon as possible after betraying their country. Well, yes, after spending the night at Chizuma-san's house, we were going to return, but then the companions of those 2 who attacked us on the way to the City of Rain appeared. We had to fight. Hitaki raised his only eye to the ceiling, apparently recalling the course of this battle. I see. Well, I'm glad everything ended well. We'll have to send a special squad to the borders, let them find out what's what. That will help us decide what to do next. May I go? Go. The door to the Hokage's office closed, leaving its eternal occupant alone with his thoughts. Aren't we rushing things too much? They're still just kids, the fourth thought to himself, leafing through the recommendations he'd received for promotions to the ranks of 10 Shinobi Academy graduates who'd seemingly only become genin yesterday. Yes, Sasuke, I thought you really did that. Well, you know, Sasuke, Sakura and Naruto slowly walked along the streets of Konoha, sharing their impressions of the past mission with each other. Don't talk nonsense, Naruto, Sasuke-kun couldn't have died at the hands of some dim-witted enemy. Haruno raised her fist to the blonde's nose in warning. Why yes, I understand. You were just crying so much. The Hokage's son smiled nervously and raised his hands in front of him in the hope of dispersing peacefully. You. Sakura blushed and wanted, apparently, to tell the blonde all her opinion about him and Sasuke and explain why the latter was better than the former, but then Mr. Convenient Opportunity intervened and Ino, Shikamaru and the eternally chewing something Cheji appeared in front of the 7th team. Naruto, Sasuke. The young Yamanaka waved her hand to the guys, carefully ignoring the presence of the pink-haired girl. How was your first serious mission? The blonde came very close to Naruto, knowing that her friend was simply great at telling all sorts of things and, to be honest, so convincingly that sometimes you couldn't tell where he had embellished and where he hadn't. Mission. Oh, great. Can you imagine? We had to guard an architect on his way to the City of Rain. Many renegades tried to kill him, but we successfully held the line. Young Namikaze flew back into the events of the past, sometimes traveling between the worlds of truth and, not to lie, but to embellish. But, as already said, the boy invented so skillfully that it was problematic to figure out where the bitter truth ended and the sweet world of dreams began. But Sakura and Sasuke were also on this mission, so sometimes looking at the faces of these two, Ino could understand whether this or that situation had happened or not. Hey, guys, the white smoke cleared in front of the 6th genin, revealing a shaggy, white-haired shinobi with an eye patch, better known as Hitaki Kakashi or the mentor of Team 7. I'm in a hurry right now, so listen carefully. I recommended you 3, he addressed only his trio, for the exam for promotion. The first test is in 2 days. You better prepare, or it will be a shame, because if you fail, you will have to remain a genin until next year. Having said this, Hitaki again disappeared in a cloud of smoke, leaving his charges alone. And what was that just now? Asked Cheji, finally distracted from eating chips. Or was it cookies? However, it is not so important. Our sensei, Naruto sighed discontentedly, wondering how his father had even given his team someone like Kakashi as a teacher. That's great. Ino attracted her friend's attention, almost glowing with joy. We'll all take the Chunin exam together. I heard that the rest of ours also received recommendations. 2 days flew by very quickly. Whether it was due to constant thoughts about future tests, or something else, but, as a result, all 9 newcomers gathered in the right place at the right time and were now waiting for the examiners who would explain the rules of the tests. It must be said that the first stage of the Chunin exam took place in Naruto's native Shinobi Academy, but finding the right room was not as easy as the guys thought. If it weren't for Sakura's excellent knowledge of illusionary techniques, Team 7 would have been stuck in a completely different room, complaining about how there was no sign of the examiners. Anyway, thanks to Haruno's ability to spot deception, the team found the right room and was now going through face control. The genin were simply checked for all sorts of cheat sheets, notes, and other nonsense that could somehow help them pass the test. Naruto found out that the first stage was a test before entering the room and was now terribly nervous, but, as Sakura put it, you should have listened to what your sensei told you, you would have known what was what. But it was too late to think about anything. Naruto, looking around, the son of the 4th noticed his friend from the academy running towards him. Yamanaka Ino waved to the blonde as she ran and smiled. I wonder what made her so happy. However, Naruto quickly forgot about the reason for the girl's joy and focused on the upcoming conversation. After all, Ino's brain was working well, Who knows, maybe she found out something about the upcoming test. Hey, Ino-chan. The blonde smiled and embraced the girl in a friendly hug. In fact, Naruto himself wasn't sure how friendly they were. Too often lately he began to feel a strange fluttering in the chest area when he was near the kunoichi. As if his heart suddenly started dancing and was about to jump out of his body. Minato described it as puberty, and Kushina happily muttered something about the beauty and fragility of first love. Naruto didn't understand why there was love here. Well, that is, he liked Ino-chan, she was a great conversationalist, a sweet and pretty girl, it was easy for him with her and he didn't need to pretend to be someone else, but Naruto was sure that he was in love with Sakura-chan. Although now, when his heart began to run 1,000 meters again, the boy was not so sure about his attitude towards Ino and Sakura. Hello, Naruto. Ready? Ino winked conspiratorially at the blonde. Today is going to be a crazy day, we need to be sure that everything works out. Yes, I think. Young Namikaze thoughtfully rubbed the back of his head. We'll try to meet at the second stage. Remember, we won't lose to your team. Ino seemed to be determined. And why is she suddenly running around so happy? She must have something not very pleasant in mind. Not very pleasant for others, of course. When all the students had been checked and were sitting in their seats, a rather strange person entered the classroom. It was a middle-aged man with a bandana-type scarf tied around his head and two frightening scars crossing his face, one covering half his face, the other slightly smaller. He was dressed, to put it mildly, not for the season. It was only autumn outside, and even then it was warm, and the shinobi was wearing a fur coat. My name is Morino Ibiki. I will be conducting your first Chunin exam. Chapter 19. My name is Morino Ibiki. My men and I will be observing the first Chunin exam. Please remember one simple rule. I make the rules here. The man looked around the room and the genin in it with a stern, heavy gaze, which sent goosebumps down many of their skins. It's hard to argue with that. It really does inspire horror. What is this? Tearing himself away from his thoughts on assessing the newly minted examinator, Naruto turned his gaze to the board, which Ibiki had already managed to write all over. Here are the main rules. For those who are particularly slow-witted, I wrote them down on the board. The man pointed to his scribbles, from which the total exam time was written most clearly. Exactly 4 hours. Peeking, whispering, turning to your neighbors, is strictly prohibited, unless, of course, you want to be disqualified. There will be 10 questions in total, however, you can still refuse to take the exam. Those who leave will be expelled along with the rest of the team. What the hell? What kind of idiot would want to refuse an exam? Some particularly brave young man from the stone village was indignant. He was right, of course, but it wasn't that simple. Those who score 0 points will be expelled along with the team and will never be able to retake the exam, Ibiki finished calmly, ignoring the genin's indignation. Here, a worried whisper went through the rows. No one wanted to leave the classroom and let their comrades down, but, equally, no one wanted to fail the test and not have the opportunity to try again. After a couple of minutes, a sufficient number of applicants left voluntarily. The rows of desks were noticeably thinned out. Are there no more people willing to leave their ranks? Then let's begin. The examiner took an impressive stack of paper from the table on which the tests were printed, and began to hand out forms to the candidates for the title of Chunin. When the last form found its owner, Ibiki solemnly announced that the exam had begun. Pencils rustled on paper and the tense panting of teenagers could be heard. Naruto also decided not to waste precious time and began to look through the assignments. What he saw put the blonde in a slight shock. He could not answer any of the questions, and yet he tried so hard to study, and during his time at the academy he was on the same level as Sasuke. So why couldn't he answer a single question now? Something was wrong here. The pencil flew up into the air and fell hard on the thin paper, furiously scribbling the expected answer. Haruno Sakura understood and loved physics well, so she did know the answer to one of the questions. It was reassuring, but the girl was worried. Would her partners be able to find that one question of theirs that they could definitely answer? It was clear that tasks of this type were clearly beyond the knowledge of genin. After all, this was an expulsion test, therefore, the questions were several levels ahead of genin logic. I see. I can't answer any of them. Sasuke's lips twisted into an unkind smile. These tasks are much higher than the rank of a genin. Suspicious. If you remember the rules, it turns out that if you get caught peeping, you'll be expelled. If you get 0 points, you'll be expelled. If you make a mistake in the answer, you'll also be expelled. What nonsense, but, Uchiha glanced at the examiner's observers, as well as the entire class, but if this is training to check our techniques, then there should be someone here who knows all the answers. Byakugan, Hyuga Hinata and Neji, her cousin who was also taking the Chunin exam with his team, activated their clan's signature technique almost simultaneously and were now looking through the other genin's answers, trying to find the most correct one. Sharingan. Uchiha Sasuke also did not waste time and remembered his training with his older brother, during which he discovered the use of the clan technique. This is simply incredible. My hand moves on its own. How good that I came across the smartest one. Now I will simply copy all his movements. It seems that, Forehead, has already answered some questions. Well, my friend, rejoice, you will be the first one from this class on whom I will try out my improved technique. Yamanaka Ino, sitting across the row from Sakura, quietly made the seal of consciousness transfer. A second later, Ino's body tiredly sank onto the desk, and Sakura Haruno suddenly took her form and began to study it furiously with her gaze. I must remember this as soon as possible, after which I will possess Shikamaru and Choji and prompt them. Damn, it looks like the guys have already used their techniques and are now happily copying. What should I do? I don't have the abilities of the Uchiha, Hyuga or Yamanaka. Kiba is doing just fine with Akamaru's help. Shino, with his bugs, Sakura is already writing something, intellect to the rescue, and Shikamaru and Choji are relying on Ino. Naruto rolled his sorrowful eyes to the ceiling, complaining about the unfairness of life. Wait a second, what is this? On the ceiling, right under the chandelier, there were a couple of small mirrors with mini kunai attached to the ends. But the most interesting thing was not who came up with such a brilliant idea, but that the answers to certain questions were displayed on these mirrors in turn. I looked at it at the right time. Naruto smiled, starting to furiously scribble some squiggles in the answer column. So, the exam time has come to an end and all your answers are reset. Morino Ibiki said solemnly, shocking the guys. Now I will ask the last question, the answer to which will decide who passed and who did not. I ask those who are unsure of themselves to leave the room, because if they do not answer correctly, they will forever lose the opportunity to raise their rank. For a while there was a murmur of discontent and indignation in the audience, but very soon many began to rise and leave. Wow, a lot more than expected. Ibiki looked around the nearly empty room with a satisfied look. Everyone who's left. You've passed. Ah, was all the genins could say. Of course, they were sitting on pins and needles in their seats, wondering if they would be able to answer the question correctly and not get kicked out, or if it would be easier to leave and come back next year. And then here's a surprise. Just as a joyful smile began to blossom on the boys' faces, something quite unexpected happened. The window into the exam room shattered into several thousand pieces with a clang, and a woman appeared before the stunned teenagers. A woman with a very hungry look. My name is Mitarashi Anko. I am your examiner for the second stage of the Chunin exams. I can't believe we survived. Next to that woman, Naruto shared his impressions of Anko with Sakura and Sasuke. In some ways he was right. Well, so what? He said it too loudly, that the second examiner was a little. Well, that. So it's true. Why rush in with poison kunai? It's good that the woman's assistants intervened and managed to calm their boss down with great difficulty. In general, Naruto was incredibly happy to be away from the hysterical examiner, even in the forest of death. It's your own fault, Sakura reasonably noted and immediately changed the subject. We have 3 days at our disposal. We need to get to our destination before the others, otherwise, goodbye Chunin rank. Yeah, I suggest we encrypt ourselves somehow in case of enemy techniques, Naruto suggested, rubbing his chin, you know, some kind of password. That makes sense, Sasuke agreed with Namikaze, we need to come up with something easy to remember. How about a ramen recipe? Naruto immediately offered his own option, to which he received astonished glances from his comrades. Do you know the recipe? Sasuke raised an eyebrow in disbelief. Of course. First you cook the noodles, then you cut the eggs, then you take the pork and carefully. This won't work, Sakura categorically interrupted the blonde, there's not a drop of logic in your password. Why is that? The boy was offended and folded his arms across his chest in displeasure. Think about it, Uchiha intervened in the beginning squabble, thereby ending the argument. If a disguised enemy approaches you, and you suddenly give him the recipe for noodles, what do you think he'll think? Well, I convinced him, but the password should be easy, but at the same time intricate, so that it would be difficult to guess. After a long squabble and lengthy arguments about whose option was better or worse, the seventh team decided to take into account the opinion of each of its members and settled on something like, pink hedgehogs flew over a purple river. It was a specific delusion, but, as Naruto said, the enemy would hardly think of such a thing. Sasuke and Sakura were in complete solidarity with him on this. Shikamaru, Cheji and Ino stopped after a long run, deciding to make a short rest and set traps for possible enemies. After all, this is a life or death test. Enko immediately warned that the first team and the second and third who came after them automatically received the rank of Chunin, but for this they need to come in full force and, of course, alive. I wonder how Naruto is, thought the young Yamanaka, creating a camouflage from the foliage around their future overnight stay. The girl had long noticed that her heart began to beat faster and a slight tremor began inside, as if thousands of butterflies had gotten lost in her body when the blonde was nearby. It was strange. Ino understood everything perfectly well, but she could not accept the fact that she had fallen head over heels in love with the restless boy. Yes, he was very handsome. Yes, he was very noisy. Yes, you don't get bored with him and you can be yourself, and yes, damn it, lately all her thoughts revolved around the son of the fourth Hokage. The girl even thought about using her technique on the object of her affection when he was sitting at the first stage of the exam and did not know how to copy the correct answers. She had even already folded the seals, but, fortunately, Naruto found some way and began to quickly scribble on the form. I hope he'll be okay, the young Yamanaka thought as she dozed off. Shikamaru would be on duty for now, then Choji, and it would be her turn closer to the morning. Naruto, Shanaru, get your ass up and let's go. Sakura was not in the mood to wake her sleeping comrade calmly, so she simply gave the blonde a kick in the soft spot, from which he, instantly waking up, jumped up with a squeal and, realizing that it was only his partner, frowned in offense. We have 2 days left. Hurry up, or we'll leave without you. Sakura smiled, which meant that her mood had improved and there would be no more bullying of the blonde. At least for the first 5 hours for sure. You won't leave, Naruto said, narrowing his eyes slyly, you won't pass the exam without me. But I'm ready, Naruto shouted, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture, not wanting to get hit on the blonde head early in the morning. Having quickly tidied himself up and collected the kunai and shuriken scattered nearby into his backpack, Naruto jumped to his feet and ran to catch up with his friends. Fortunately, they had only gone a couple of meters. Having caught up with his partners and drawn level with them, Naruto received an indifferent look from Sasuke and a slightly mischievous one from Sakura. It seemed that the girl was simply in a good mood, which could not but please. Having exchanged glances, the genin started running towards their designated goal, a low tower that had previously served as an observation tower, but now served as an overnight stay for the winners of the Chunin exam. At this rate, we'll get to the goal first, Cheji joyfully announced, crushing another opponent into the ground, not forgetting to stuff chips into his mouth. Don't be stupid. There are plenty of enemies here, and not weak ones at that. Shikamaru cooled his partner's ardor slightly, blocking the enemy's movements with his shadow imitation. We gained a lot of time thanks to those blood-sucking caterpillars that Ino noticed. Now many of our opponents are no longer scary to us, as they are calmly resting somewhere in the clouds. I wonder how the rest of us are doing, Ino muttered under her breath, tying up the unconscious bodies that Cheji had crushed. In any case, we should leave this place as soon as possible. The noise will surely attract even more enemies. The guys nodded in agreement at the blonde's fair remark and, having borrowed a couple of kunai and shuriken from their defeated opponents, hurried to leave the battlefield behind. Bite me. Haruno easily broke the enemy's neck with her elbow, sending the unfortunate guy writhing on the ground, spitting out clots of blood. Well, if there was one thing the pink-haired girl had in abundance, it was brute force. Sasuke and Naruto also didn't waste time and took out the enemies one after another. Team 7 was lucky to run into a united group of stone genin. There were 3 times as many of them and their combat skills were also impressive. Fire style. Phoenix flowers. Uchiha Sasuke got tired of fighting off his opponents and decisively went on the offensive. This scared off the enemy shinobi, but not for long. Things were taking a not very encouraging turn. They were surrounded. Ouch. One of the most agile and annoying genin twisted intricately and hit Sakura. The girl with a painful cry flew to the side and, hitting her head hard on a tree, fell to the hard ground. Sakura-chan. Naruto tried to run up to his friend, but a giant cabinet-like guy blocked his way. What do you want? Get out of the way. Namikaze pulled a couple of kunai out of his holster and, running chakra threw them at the enemy. The latter, not expecting such an attack, did not have time to dodge and a couple of seconds later was clutching a wound on his shoulder from which blood was gushing. This angered the wounded shinobi's companions, and they began to attack with redoubled force. It is unknown how this whole mess would have ended if Ino, Cheji and Shikamaru had not jumped out of the bushes. Team 6 managed to distract the enemies, which Uchiha and Namikaze took advantage of. Sasuke formed seals and used another fire technique, throwing the scorched enemies back. Naruto concentrated a small ball of chakra in his hand, remembering everything his father told him while teaching him the rasengan. The unfinished technique of the fourth Hokage did not just hit the enemy who fell under it, it almost made a gaping hole in his body, plunging his supporters into mute horror. Naruto did not lose his head and, pleased with the impression he made, ran at the remaining opponents. They, not wanting to part with their lives, hastily retreated, and the son of the fourth, like a cat that had eaten too much sour cream, looked at their heels sparkling in the distance with obvious superiority. What kind of technique was that? Ino asked in amazement, voicing the general question. This, rasengan. My father taught it to me. It wasn't easy, but I managed. So everything is fine, I'm a good boy. The guy proudly, hiding his smile, lifted his nose and assumed the look of, admire me, mortals. You definitely won't die from modesty. Sakura cut her beaming partner off, after which she smiled gratefully. Thank you, Naruto. Glad to try. Namikaze stuck his thumb out in satisfaction. Now all that's left is to get to the tower. Let's go. The blonde took a couple of steps forward, then stopped and rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. Does anyone know where this tower is? A friendly laugh rang out across the small clearing, occasionally interrupted by the trills of birds or the wind. That was great. Let's go, I have a map. Ino pulled out some kind of bundle from her bosom and, unfolding it on the nearest stone, began to look for a shorter route. In the end, everything ended quite well. The 7th and 6th teams of Konoha arrived at the base first and, accordingly, received the title of Chunin. Along with them, the rank of Team Sand, consisting exclusively of the children of the 4th Kazekage, was also raised. The 9th team, which included Hinata, Kiba and Shino, said that the children of the Kazekage deserved their title, because their skills, especially the youngest, Gaara, are impressive. The rest of the participants in the exam were also found, some alive, and some. Yeah, but it was a competition for survival, so there is nothing to be sad about. And none of the Kage, the genin of whose countries came to the exam, made any claims to the 4th Hokage, saying that the exam was conducted fairly and interestingly enough. And the fact that there were casualties. Sorry, but this is an integral part of the life of a shinobi. This is how this world is arranged, the weak simply do not survive in it. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Ino, Shikamaru, Choji, as well as Gaara, Kankuro and Temari served as an example of unity and friendship in this exam. Now they will be sent on more difficult and dangerous missions, but it is safe to say that they will cope with everything. Those who failed to raise their rank this time will be able to participate next year, so they are not particularly upset and intend to first of all go home and get a good night's sleep in order to practice teamwork the next day. In general, everyone was in a fairly joyful mood, and no one was particularly sad. The winning teams of Konoha decided to get together in the evening and have a picnic in honor of their promotion, because in the future it is unlikely that there will be an opportunity to be together, remembering stupid missions like catching Tora-chan, who, by the way, is now stubbornly preparing another escape plan. This kitty is not going to give up, and Naruto, not without a smile, wonders how many more newly minted genin will have to get acquainted with her claws. Finally, the hard and incredibly long day came to an end, and Naruto Namikaze ran home as fast as he could, where his loving parents were already waiting for him. Kushina had long ago set the table with all sorts of delicacies, and Minato, as before, was reading some book, comfortably settled in an armchair. I'm home. The fair-haired boy quickly took off his shoes and appeared on the threshold of the kitchen entrance. You look a bit out of breath, the fourth smiled affectionately at his son, closing the book and putting it back on its rightful shelf. There's no need to rush. You have a well-deserved vacation for 2 weeks. Tabane, you always talk about work and work. Enough already. Let's celebrate our son's promotion. Kushina playfully slapped her husband on the top of his blonde head with an oven mitt and immediately climbed into the oven, taking out a delicious-smelling pie. Wow, with apples. Naruto licked his lips appetizingly, which made his parents laugh. But once upon a time, the former carrier of the fox demon could not even dream of such a thing. For some reason, tears appeared in his blue eyes, but the boy pushed them back with force and squeezed his parents in a suffocating embrace. They hugged their son back and joyfully said something about what a great guy he was and how proud they were of him. For the fair-haired boy, this was the very happiness for which he would not mind giving anything. I'm home, the thought flashed through my head, making my soul feel so warm and light. End.